let you know. But
All
I'll be
right.
back.
We
Awesome.
are live. We are here for our Raptors Therapy session. I'm the mouth of the North, Andrew Reese. This is the Reese Report. I am joined by Coach Roache, Tim. I am joined by Beyond the Locker Room, who is very nicely wearing a 2019 championship hat so that we're not completely depressed about this team. I will also be joined by Hopeful very shortly, as you can see from Basketball Rewind. Um, Guys, I really, really needed this, so thank you for joining me. I do give hot takes on Raptors Live TV, but I really needed to have a session with my friends, people that I've met that know the struggles that we've had with this team this year. Um, we're going to go through the future of the Raptors. We're going to go through Fred VanVleet and Nick Nurse and their last month, which hasn't been pretty. We're going to talk about Masai and his struggles with this roster construction. And then we're going to end it with some good stuff. And we're going to talk about the draft and the offseason and what the Raptors should do to help this team not be mid. Because when you're 40 and 41, you're mid and you don't get the greatest draft pick, which is not good if you're trying to be competitive in the future. And with the Stradinger 2024 pick for Jakob Poeltl, we need to do something this year because Pascal Siakam still has the option to leave this team. And they got to do something next year to maybe keep him happy. Although Pascal's a very nice man. Even on Draymond's Green show, he's a very nice man. He doesn't come across as someone who's controversial at all and just wants to play basketball. But let's start with, I'm going to start with Coach. Coach, they broke you yesterday. That performance yesterday, I don't want to get too much into the game, but that was one of the worst performances I've seen from a team at the end of the season, and further cements how we feel about this team. Fred VanVleet has been doing a lot of press lately, trying to push himself, obviously, to get a big contract. He couldn't have been playing any worse. In his last 5 games, he's shooting 24% from three. That's 12 of 50, folks. 12 of 50 from the three-point line. He claims to be a leader, and he claims to be a floor general, of which he is easily not. What are your thoughts on Fred and what this team needs to do about Fred? And then I'll get into Nick after that, because to me, Fred and Nick are a combo. You either have both or you have none. But go ahead, Coach.
So for most of the year, I've been fairly supportive of Fred. Not like I'm a big cheerleader of him. I'm not. Just try to be neutral. Lately, though, it's been getting more difficult to do so. There's just been a lot of contested jump shots, and many people have pointed to this. Like he'll just to pull up threes with someone in his face who might be 6'9". You know, Fred's like 5'11". That's difficult. Some of the shot selection, shot decisions have just been very questionable. Whether you love Fred or you don't love him, like it's not the best. They're just generally not the best shots in general. I think in terms of next season, you know, Fred's up at the end of the year, unless he opts into his contract, which I don't see that happening. I think he's someone who wants to get paid. And I understand that from a player's perspective, wanting to get paid, wanting to get your money in the league, get that, whether it's Fred or anybody else. But I think where this team is, like you said earlier, we're mid for 500. So we're paying someone 30 plus million who's going to want that in free agency for the poor shooting that we've seen this year overall. Nope. It's not worth it. So moving forward, I think they either need to go in a different direction of a guard, or maybe you move Scotty to point guard if they really believe like he can generally become Magic Johnson 2.0 kind of thing. Then maybe that's something that they do. They give it a try, see what it's like. But in terms of coming back next year, I don't see it.
Beyond, we haven't talked as much as I've talked with Coach and Kenyon. How long have you felt this way about Fred and how he's affected this team?
I don't want to say I'm clairvoyant, but this doesn't surprise me where this is going. I felt this way about Fred pretty much even from the championship season, but definitely the year after. It concerned me giving. Sometimes some people are not meant for certain roles or bigger roles, and if you give certain people certain larger responsibilities, sometimes their sense of self or character starts to reveal itself a lot faster. And I think with Fred, sometimes you got to be very careful when you do that with certain players. And I think with Fred, they gave Fred way too much bandwidth, too much. I don't want to say respect. It's not the word I'm looking for, but too much autonomy in this case with this organization. And I think sometimes when you put that in the wrong person's hands, it can end up being a meltdown. I think that's what we're seeing right now. I mean, a lot of the stuff that everyone's talking about with Fred right now is not really that much different than what we saw from Fred earlier in his career. I mean, the only difference is that you had kind of quote, policing on the court in this case, which is the big difference. So you would have in this case here, be it Kyle Lowry or Kawhi Leonard, even Marc Gasol kind of give a look like, hey, hold on here, young buck, hold on here. It's like the third three in a row. No, we're not doing that. Okay, we're not doing that. There's no. Now he's an older player. He's got a little more, weight to him because of, the All-Star game appearance. It was just mentioned last night. He got the one vote for MVP by Hubie Brown. God bless Hubie Brown. I love him, but I
love him too.
Yeah, but I was I would have picked about 3-4 Raptors before I got the Fred VanVleet, but whatever. I think that all those type of things, every step in this case creates, the situation we have today. And honestly, it was just something that was bound to happen. And let's put it this way: when we get the Nick or with him, I think this week or this month, to your point, has been very good for the Raptors in a certain sense. And maybe I look at it very differently than most Raptor fans. I think it's been very positive in some ways because it's offered clarity. And that's the word I keep running through my head: clarity. And there's no need to worry about for a front management situation about, oh, geez, what will we feel if we move off of this person or that person? How will the fan base feel? How will the sponsors feel, and so on and so forth? It can be very clearly, stated what's going on and how it's played out by their actions. It make it very easy to make some decisions in the offseason.
Yeah. April 1st was my son's birthday. He turned 6, and Nick Nurse gave me quite the present because he said, and I don't want to go through the entire quote, but I need a few weeks to consider my future. To me, Nick Nurse has had this on his mind for quite some time and just volunteered the information. I don't think he was asked a question. He just came out with it and said, I need to rethink my future because I've been here a long time and it's been a very frustrating season. Kenyon, to me, it's 0% they're coming back, both of them. Do you think Fred's failure is that he was trying too hard to be Kyle Lowry?
No, I think Fred never wanted to be Kyle Lowry. I think he wanted to be himself, but he wanted to be better than Kyle Lowry. I think Fred compares himself to others in a sense, and that's where you sometimes get into trouble. And I think that the media played into that as well. Fred is who he is, and he can be a great player in an optimal role. But we never put him in that place, both as a potential leader in his locker room or anything. We never gave him the opportunity to grow into the person that he was supposed to be. And I think, we see how he is right now. Unfortunately, it's tough, right? Because I don't want to I think that the man's on the way out, so you don't want to do the whole. Okay, so you guys have seen Fresh Prince, right?
Yep.
You know where I'm going with this, and Jazz keeps getting tossed out of the house, right? I don't think that we have to do that on the way out, but I also don't think that we have to act like, we need to do him a favor or that we still owe him. I think that there's still a sense amongst some Raptors fans that we owe him. And I think that we've done more than right by him. I was asked a question on what is it, Live by the Three, and we were talking about, players doing press conferences and stuff. I don't care about that stuff. I want players to be able to have their own platforms, but there's timing. It's not what you say sometimes, it's how you say it.
When you say it.
And when you say it. And there's a lot of context. And for someone who is media trained, it is not his first rodeo. It is not his first interview. Same with Nick Nurse. You're telling me that he had such a brain fart that he lost part of his brain, it fell out, and there's like cerebral fluid coming from his thing. Like this is crazy. So I feel I'm probably rambling a bit, but I feel like the Kyle stuff probably did a disservice to Fred, but at the same time, I don't think that he was trying to be Kyle.
My whole thing with this is, if you take the Kyle stuff aside, Nick's inability to discipline Fred VanVleet has really hurt this team. When he's going 1 for 19 or 1 for 10, or he's just not making the right plays, he's not. Now, you could blame that on management not getting a backup point guard, which I've complained about for 3 years. But if you have Scott and you can change up your lineup and try something different, there's no reason why Fred has to be out there 30 to 40 minutes every single game. I made this point on Raptors Live TV. He's only played 2 games this year where he's played under 26 minutes. So he's been used hard, and it's led to injuries. Kenyon, you pointed out he didn't get his surgery. I think that was strategic because he wanted to get paid and he didn't want to show weakness. But I don't know how this affects his contract, but it's not going to be here. Guys, give me a quick percentage. I got it at 0 that Fred's back. And Nick, I want to say 0, but it's a little higher for Nick. But what about Fred, guys? Coach, percentage he's back?
30%.
Wow, that's high. Beyond?
Before the month started, I might have been where coach is, but I think a lot of bridges have been burnt in the last few weeks. I say 10%.
10%.
And I only put the 10% in the case that where he's in a position of weakness, that he has no choice in this case here. It's not like it's like, oh, I'm coming back here because I want to be a Raptor for life.
Right. Kenyon?
So when you share Uber with someone, does it still give like the $20 free credit? Because I don't mind sharing that $20 free credit. I'm just putting that out there. I think there will be a little bit of a merry-go-round, as there always is with our musical chairs with the free agency, and I think depending on how free agency goes, he can always opt in. And this is something that Beyond and Coach and myself, we were thinking through last night very briefly. And it was like, oh, right, he can be back. I'm back. So
Dwight Howard situation.
Yeah. It could be a Dwight Howard situation. But yeah, so I think that unlike Schroeder, I don't think that he'll end up signing like 15, mil, because he still has a player option. And I think that, he might be kicking himself for firing his former representation.
Are you guys able to see the questions down here? Just to.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We see what you see.
Okay, good. I just want to answer this quickly. Like, I would completely agree that Nick is not happy with roster construction. However, he knew he was never going to have Kawhi forever. And your job as a coach is to help improve what you have. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of improvement on this team or on this roster, although Kenny and I believe might disagree with me. He seems to only be able to coach vets. And that's why you have a person like Jeff Doughton who doesn't get a contract. And you see all the young players on this team outside of Scott Barnes. And I'm not seeing great improvement from these players. What do you guys say to that?
I'll just jump in really quick. With the Jeff Doughton thing, I actually disagree, because what was it? The report came out that Nurse actually tried to sit down and basically, please, I beg, like Oliver Twist, asking for them to sign Jeff Doughton. So I actually have to say, you know what, James? James and I have not always agreed about this specific point, and I actually think I agree with him on this point. I don't think that there's guys that Nurse wanted to play, but I also don't think that we gave him the most amount of tools to work with. Now, that being said, Nurse still could have done a better. Oh, that one's spicy.
James, thank you very much. I completely agree.
You just lost a subscriber in Eric Flynn. I'm not going to touch that one, but what I will say is that, I feel like we didn't give him the best tools. I mean, I think Masai has a tendency to hold on and wait for moves and try to always make the best deal. So it's like we probably could have had Turner if we pulled the trigger when our pick was 8th last year. We missed out on that, and then all of a sudden we couldn't get Turner. You have other situations. Now, that being said, you also have to look at the things that Masai has done, and you have to say, okay, seat's toasty, but I think I think that he has earned his right to fix it, or to see if he can fix it. And then in terms of Nurse, he did what he could do, but at the same time, it all comes back down to Fred, right? If you're prioritizing certain guys or you're blasting certain guys over others, and it's not equal, it's not. It can really grind on people's gears if you're always getting called out in the media. So I'll let others speak.
Guys, got anything to add?
Well, I'll go then. I didn't really discuss Nurse too much in the first segment, but let's, as far as Nick Nurse goes, I think, yeah, you can look at it one way and say you didn't have the roster involved, but when it's all said and done, I mean, this is not Nick Nurse, man. Like, I'm sorry, man. When it's all said and done, if you just look at the team and how he's been coaching them throughout the 4 years in this case, it's been getting worse and worse, and nothing to do with roster construction on these things. For example, let's take the Sixers series last year. We all had all the ways in this case that you could find ways to improve the opportunities for you to win. It took him 2 games, people, two games for him to finally figure out, well, maybe you might want to start moving, maybe Fred off of Maxey. That might be pretty wise, maybe. Maybe in this case here, we might want to actually put, maybe have maybe some bigger dudes in this case here on Harden, perhaps in this case here. Now, it's like, what a shock. Just unbelievable. It took him 2 games to figure that out. And it's not the first time we've seen this. He's had these scenarios where he's kind of late to the game on making adjustments, and he's supposed to be the adjustments master. As far as the rotations go, at some point you have to have a set rotation. Fine, you want to fight for Doughton, but if I'm management, I'm looking at the other ways. He's been sitting there all year, and you went play to get the guy. So now you want to tell me now is your job's on the line now? Now you want Doughton? Like, right? I'm like, a little late now if I'm the management team. It's like, wait a second. And I don't want to put a conspiracy hat on here. I know some Raptor fans have said so, but if you start going down the line of the roster of the guys that don't seem to get played, they're all guys in this case that threaten minutes for a particular player. Just look at in this case here, right? Thad never had an issue with losing minutes. It's Thad's performance is why he lost minutes. That's the reason why he lost minutes. But Banton had a little stretch there before he got hurt. Then he never got back in. Flynn, I think Flynn's a bit special situation in this case here. I think Flynn is also partly performance, but I'm sure in this case if he plays well, the moment he messes up, he's out again. Doughton started coming on strong late this season. And all of a sudden it's like, well, we'll put Banton in here for a little bit, Barton in here for a little bit. Anybody in this case is going to provide supposedly quote unquote backup minutes for Fred. Heck, Scotty is the same thing. It's like, no, we won't do this. We can't somehow survive without Fred's leadership at the point guard position. So all these things have been done in the pursuit of acquiescing to Fred. You name it, it comes down to Scotty's role of being more of a point guard because of Fred. Pascal having more opportunities to handle the ball, which he was doing most of last year because of Fred. GTJ in this case here, looking for more minutes in this case here and be put to the bench. Is really GT Dave playing any better or worse than Fred? I wouldn't say so. But in this case here, because of seniority and who he is, he's on the bench because of Fred. You keep going down the list. We talked about OG's situation with his comments in the book and not getting any looks. You go down the line of players, and all roads lead back to the same place. The signpost ahead, the Twilight Zone. It's the same place. It leads back to the Fred zone. Wherever you want to call it, that's what's going on. And I think the two of them are tied together. And I'd be fascinated to see wherever the next stop Nurse is, because my percentage for him, I'll go up front. My percentage for him is 0% coming back on that front. But I think I'll be curious to see what he looks like without Fred and see what it is. I refer to Fred as like his security blanket, kind of like, Linus from the Peanuts, the blue blanket. That's like his blanket, warm and fuzzy, keeps him nice and feel warm and secure in this case here. When in doubt, give the ball to Fred or put Fred back in the game. So I haven't been impressed with Nurse. I've questioned how good Nurse has been as a coach from the championship season. And as time's gone on, sadly, I don't want to feel that way. I think I feel validated that, he's an average coach. And that's pretty much what I see here. I don't think he's something that he's like some coach is like, oh my gosh, we found the next great Popovich or Greg Popovich or something like that. I don't see it.
Yeah, I earlier this season I would have put Nick Nurse's percentage a little higher, but after that interview, I got him at 0. Coach, you've been very vocal about the Raptors not retaining Jeff Doughton. Why?
Game 81, you went out and got Pirtle. You're in the 9th spot. All these guys in their prime, Pascal, Fred, you want to say OG, he's 25. I think it's a fair argument to say. All these guys are in their prime, and when they do things like that, and now what's come out about Nurse really wanted Doughton to play, it must be frustrating because it's like your prime doesn't care as much. I get it. They're not winning the championship this year. But what you, as a player, you have a certain amount of pride for what's going on right now. You're not looking forward to the next rookie that's coming in. We as fans are, yes. But when you're out there and you're grinding for 75, 80-plus games, you're a game back or half a game back of Atlanta. You brought this 26-year-old undrafted point guard who has a skill set that's needed on this team, who has displayed it on this team, and you're saying, nah, we don't need you. We'll bring you back next year, but we're not going to use you right now. To me, that's just like, if I'm Pascal, I'm pissed off. If I'm Fred, I'm pissed off. If I'm OG, I'm pissed off, right? Because it's as if this season does not matter to them. Like, if we were in 11th place, we're outside the play-in, I get it 100%, forget it. But when you went out and got Pirtle, that changed everything for this team. When you got rid of the draft pick for next year, that changed everything for this team. That signaled that you're trying to compete this year, so why not try to finish the job? This is like making a lemon meringue pie and putting no meringue on it right now at the end of the season kind of thing. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and that's why I when Kenyon says they've given up, I want them to have a direction and pick it. Either go for it and help the team any way you can, or tank and do what Dallas did and bench everybody. But they haven't seemed to have made a decision what direction they want to go. And that's what's frustrating as a fan. It's frustrating. Beyond's he's already shaking his head because Dallas has pretty much given up, whereas the Raptors have kept going. And that leads me to this question from Don't Sign Portal, which is quite the handle. I think we can all agree we lack shooting. A blind man could tell you that. My question is, let's say we draft well and decide to bring the core back along with some shooters. What's our finish? We can't do that. If you re-sign Gary Trent and Fred, how are you adding anything else other than one person from the draft? You still have the shooting problems. You still have the spacing issues. You still have the offensive issues, and you still have Nick Nurse as coach. So you need more of an upheaval, in my opinion, to improve this team. What do you guys think?
Well, can I just quickly say about the Nurse comment, what Beyond had said too? You asked me about Fred, and I said 30%. Nurse is 0% for me. It's the classic It's the classic organization. Let's get rid of the coach before we get rid of the players adage. So Nurse, I don't see will be coming back next year.
Hello to Raptors Dan. Glad to see you here. The therapy's going well, and we're not close to done yet. A lot of people are upset about Doughton, and as I've said, Kenyon, you disagree with me on this, so I'll ask you. I don't think this organization has picked a direction, and I think it goes even further back than just this year. They don't seem to know what they want to do, and when you're a team that's in the middle and you're trying to move up, or you're deciding if you want to tank, you get 40 and 41 on the season.
I'm trying to think. What did I disagree with you on?
well, just know, like you stated that, like, when they got Pirtle, that was a set decision to go for it.
But gotcha.
If you're not going to do something after Pirtle, which Beyond has pointed out, it's like Pirtle and then what? I think even Coach said it. Pirtle and then what? They didn't do anything, and they didn't make the necessary moves to get rid of the selfish players that Masai talked about, and then you don't sign the potential of Doughton. So there's no clear direction. It seems like Nurse is over here, Masai's over here, Fred's over here, Pascal's talking to Draymond Green. There's no direction for any of these players.
Well, I mean, I don't mind Pascal talking to Draymond. I mean, that's all.
I just threw that in there.
Yeah. But what I will say is this. I look at it this way. So I don't know if you remember, but on Raptors Live TV, immediately after, I described it as a wet fart. Yeah. And I said that it was like a wet fart because I said that. I actually agreed with you. I said but I looked at the move separately. I said that this is the Pirtle move, and I like the Pirtle move because that happened. I think I was actually live on my own channel the night that the Pirtle move happened, I think, or maybe the night that the deadline happened with these
No,
two.
I think it was my space because
that's right.
It was KD3 came off that night when
right.
My space, yeah.
Right. So yeah, and I guess my point is, I really said that the Pirtle move on its own, people were like not happy with, and I was like, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the subsequent lack of moves. And to me, at first, I was like, okay, the Pirtle move happened. I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And I would have even been fine, even though people would have disagreed with me. I would have been fine getting Pirtle and still moving Fred. I know it sounds odd, but going back to, I guess, a debate that we've had on and off is I thought that you could hamper the spacing enough to lose. And I was okay with that, right? Because I'm like, you're solving a problem. You're getting minutes down on three of your guys, your OG, your Pascal, your and your Barnes, but you're still hampering spacing enough that you get a chance at a higher pick. And so that was my thinking, but they didn't do that. And I also noticed that there was a lot of chemistry issues leading into that. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like I'm good with that, right? And I thought at that point in time, I remember saying, you know what? I'm kind of over the season, but to enjoy the season, I think that we should view it. I went from 10 games to 5 games at a time. So I like just said, for me to enjoy it, I need to watch it at 5 games at a time. How did they do 5 games? Cool. All right. Talk about it, vent or cheer. Go to the next 5 games. And I think that also helped me to remain hopeful, remain happy throughout. But I think in terms of looking at the future, I do think that Masai has hinted. He doesn't ever say outright. He doesn't telegraph his moves. But I think he's hinted enough in the press conference that maybe he's aware that there was a problem. The move wasn't the deadline. The move should have happened in January. Yes. And that's, I think, where we have disagreed, is that a lot of people said, oh, the deadline. I'm like, that wasn't the time to move it. This goes back to my point before, where you waited so long, or you focus on one move and you forget, the KD move. We don't have to go down the whole thing of the KD move. But my point is, you focus on the KD move, and you're like, oh man, KD's going to be around. And then you missed out on all these other moves, these other little small ancillary, whether it's DeJounte Murray or other moves that you could have potentially gotten had you not just solely been focused on KD.
But Kenyon, isn't that isn't that the same issue we have in this case here the year before trying to get Giannis? A couple of years earlier?
Yes. And you know who the backup plan to Giannis was? Rudy Gobert.
Right.
Oh, that's a terrible backup plan.
It was it was terrible. You had people asking for Rudy Gobert in the summer, and I'm like, I'm not gonna name names today, but you had certain people, we'll just say tubers for now, that were asking for Rudy Gobert in the summer, and I'm like, Rudy Gobert is not going to change the fortunes of your franchise. Not this franchise.
No, but but the other problem too is funny enough, ironically, they ended up getting a player that has very much similar characteristics to Rudy Gobert.
That's true. That's true, but he doesn't cost $40 million a year.
No, he doesn't. But
no. You know what? Beyond, I gotta say, Beyond, I can't even disagree with you now that Pirtle has qualities that I like, but there's going to be issues until they add shooting because the spacing is not going to get better. Like Pirtle can pass the ball out of the high post. I like that. But there's no threat to pass out of the high post. So teams are just going to sink in on him. And unless you're running, at the pick and roll at that point with one of your bigger guys, their teams are not going to go for that fake because there's no outside shooting. So I understand now what you're trying to say, and I was against it before, but unless they add shooting, it's not going to get better.
Right.
I hear you.
No, and I just the jump on that point is a little bit about this is the part that always frustrated me with this team in the recent years is that I keep referring to them as a walking contradiction. So we always talk about the shooting and stuff of that nature. They get Pirtle. I would think if you grab Pirtle, we all agree in this case that if you grab Pirtle, it makes your offense have to be a tad bit more complex because you got to figure out ways. But they have a coach in this case where offensive complexity is not really his forte. Right? He's like, give the ball the will. Something they're doing Fresh Prince Bel-Air's shows is give the ball the will. That's all it is. That's it.
Heavy ISO. Yeah.
So that's not going to help if you have a guy like Pirtle on the team. So I don't understand. And this is the part you didn't mention this part there, Reese, about the quote that Nurse made. The other part of it, which is really the really big fat part of it, when he refers to pretty much in paraphrasing, he and the management team are not on the same page essentially.
No, they're not.
That is the gem that came out of this. That was the one pretty much said it's been fun. Okay, that's the issue, right? So if we're talking about where they think the team should be versus what he thinks the team should be versus how he thinks they should run the offense versus maybe how they think these guys could be deployed, or in this case something as small as Jeff Doughton in the big picture. Whatever it is, it's across the board. Like you could pick any player and you can already see some issue that you probably can see where the management's thinking one way about the player, how he should be used, and Coach Nurse is thinking of a different way. Pick the player.
In hindsight, not trading for Pirtle might have been the better move because they wouldn't have the 40-41 record. They'd be worse. And if you look at the way this team is, they're no different with him. I understand they got a little bit better, but it's not a massive difference that's going to, other than giving yourself a few more wins, it's not a massive difference. Like
here's where the politics come in play, though, that I would agree with you on the whole, but there's one X factor we have to consider. And you said at the beginning and top of the show, they have to sign Pascal. And for that reason alone, it kept everyone quiet at that point. Everyone calmed down.
Pascal loves him, right? Pascal loves Jacob.
Right. Everything calmed down. Even in this stage of the game, Pascal's demeanor in this case is still fairly positive considering the situation. Can you imagine we're losing all these games and what Siakam's thinking at that point? Going back to coach's first point, you talk about wasting a year. The guy's got career highs and everything, and you can't give a couple players to play with?
I know. Well, that leads me to Masai, and I'm going to read this as a quote so everyone can hear it. And I'm going to hold this to Masai, and if he doesn't stick to his word, I'm going to have a real problem. We are always focused on trying to retain our players. That's always the focus for us. And I'll be focused on that when these guys and with these guys and see how they perform the rest of the season and make that assessment. Masai, I hope you were watching. I hope you were watching. I hope you make the proper assessment, because Fred can't stay after watching him the last month. Gary Trent Jr., who's been hurt and has been struggling, tough decision there. I think you got to keep Jack because you traded a first for him. But boy, are there some assessments on this team that he has to make. And I'm telling you right now, there's no justification for keeping what he called himself selfish players. So now we get to Masai, guys, and I want you to put your GM hat on. I'll start with Coach. You're Masai Ujiri after making that comment. What do you do?
Well, here's an issue. Look at the free agent track record.
It's not good.
7 years. It's bad. It's real bad.
Really
Otto
bad.
Porter might be the best, and that's saying something. Right?
Yep.
This organization does have to draft and develop players. That's what they've done. And they've, for the most part, they've had quite a bit of success with that until the last few years, outside of Scotty. It's been bad. And even the 905 this year, they didn't make the playoffs their first year. This is something this organization has to pride itself in. So I think the DeMar trade, I think that's affected him. And it's hard for him to part with his own guys. We know how loyal he is. We know that he loves OG Anunoby. Loves him. And it would have taken, another team to ship out 7 players and 3 picks. The same thing for Lowry. We could have had Maxey, allegedly, for Kyle Lowry, but he wanted Thibault and he wanted picks. And then, of course, someone's going to say no. If it's, I'm sure for OG it was the same thing, because there's the market value and then there's his value that he takes into consideration. Look,
James is not happy with Masai. I just wanted to throw that out there before we continue. Go ahead, Coach.
I love the man dearly, Masai. He brought this team a championship. He developed it. He took the huge risk that most GMs would have been afraid to take in trading their best player to go and get a top 5 player in the NBA at the time. That's
injured,
who didn't want to be here long term. Made it pretty clear. But I think you said it at the trade deadline. I'm tired of essays and papers on evaluating this team. If we can see it and they can't see it, that's a problem. You cannot bring this group back, this core back as is. Some guys will have to go. Nick, because of these recent comments, and I had actually Nick coming back one more year. See if you can fix this. See if this can look different with a different roster. Because I do feel bad, because I don't think they put a good roster for him. This isn't just a Fred problem. It's not just a Nick problem. It's not just a Masai problem. It's just so intertwined that it's just this major problem with all these components in it. So if I'm Masai and Bobby this summer, take your vacation now, because when you come back, I think you might be here a lot this summer doing some work.
Beyond, it's not as bad as the Mavs, but what do the Raptors do for me, I'm about winning. So to get even close to the top 3, what can they do to improve this team?
I'm more optimistic, because I don't think the Raptors situation is bad. I think the Raptors make their situation worse than it really is. If the Raptors were any other organization, they would have made some of these moves, to Coach's point, a while back, and we would have a much more clean idea what type of team we have. But because they didn't do so, we're now in this muddle, this kind of mess of you don't know, you don't have any idea what you have in this case here. The only thing I've said it from time, the only thing I can be sure of with this team is that at worst, Pascal Siakam is the second option for a championship team. After that, I have no clue about any of the rest of the dudes. Any of the rest of them, including Scotty. I don't know what Scotty's going to be. I don't know what type of player Scotty's going to be. Same thing goes with OG. A lot of OG fans, I ain't disrespecting OG, but you've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's he's going to be 26 pretty soon, guys. The waitings need to stop at some point. By 26, some guys are already like 4-time, 5-time All-Stars at that point, okay? 26. You know spring chicken. So at this point, you're sitting here going to yourself, like, just get it over with. Like, Dallas' situation is that they're two opposite spectrums in this case. Dallas, in this case here, is pretty much swinging for the fences for everything. And now they're in the mess they're in. The Raptors are the opposite. They're analysis by paralysis. They can't get out of their own way. It's like, oh, geez, I'm not sure. Should we make a deal? What will this do? How will this affect the fan base? What will MLC think when we get the playoffs? All these things are in their mind instead of just making the right move to actually build the team that should be built. For example, if you had to ask yourself, and all of us are intelligent basketball fans, and you said, what's the ideal type of team that you would build around Pascal Siakam? Is this the ideal type of team you think you would put on there? A shoot first point guard?
Hell
a center
no.
that can shoot past 5 feet? A team that's got no bench to give him any minutes afterwards so he can get a rest? A coach that gives a touch, half his plays is isolation and say, have at it? That's the type of team? They try to find, like, Pascal's almost like, in this case, like Simone Biles. Let me try to find which ways I can do a double twist in the air and flip around and land it and stick it for a 10. That's what I got to do every game in this case when I see the type of team they put around them. It's like, here we go, Pascal. We'll add one more degree of difficulty for you. Play by center's got only go 4 feet from the hoop. Try that one out for size. And he figured a way out to get his 25 points somehow after a little bit of adjustment. And I sit here and shake my head. It's like, I get it. Your lovely wife and others, in this case, not big fans of Siakam. But I think when you pull back a little bit and see what this team's about, you're building a team that is literally the antithesis of a player with his skill set. Literally the antithesis of it. You know who this team's built for? This team's built for Fred VanVleet. That's what this team's built for. It's like a much better version of the Philadelphia 76ers with Allen Iverson. It's the same type of style. Bunch of front court players grabbing rebounds, and he's chucking up 20 shots a night. That's the setting screens for him left, right, and center. That's the team we have. That's the type of team we built. For a guy in this case, I don't know what type of pull he has, but that's where the situation where I sit here and like, you say one thing, but you do the opposite. So Masai's going to come out here in the summertime and say, oh, I love Pascal and what he went through and this and that. Okay, fine. Then help a brother out, man. Get him some guys that can shoot. Get him a couple bench guys that you can sit on the bench and not worry that the lead's going to go down 10 points the moment he sits on the bench. Please, something. And I think that's where I'm just sitting there going, like, you guys are making this bigger than it really is. Now, Dallas, that's an issue. That's an issue. Toronto, that's not much of an issue in the big picture. With the exception of the 2024 pick, they have all their picks going down the road. They have that there. They have enough people to move around that they could get out of this mess that they want to. And I think really starts with having Fred. Either he walks, he work out a sign trade with somebody. And then I think you got to make the tough decision on OG. I'm in the camp to move OG for better depth and for me, higher end quality talent. That's me. I got no issue with OG, but if I'm looking at how I want to look at this team, it's Pascal and Scotty, and I need to get as many guys that fit into their skill set.
At this point, I can't even disagree with you at this point. I think they really got to revamp this roster, and that means moving OG. You got to do it. I don't think I'm at the point now where I don't want to pay OG big money. I just don't think that it helps the team get better in the future if you give him that money. I'd say the same thing about Gary Trent right now. I cannot go another season with this team the way that it is. Building around, and I think Masai's in a lot of trouble because I talked about this with the Leafs GM for your hockey fans out there. When you start to become friends with people on the roster, or you start to have feelings for people on the roster, it affects your judgment. And I think Masai has grown afraid to move guys. This is a guy who traded Carmelo Anthony. This is a guy who traded DeMar DeRozan. I want that guy back. The guy who's not afraid to make a big move to improve his roster. The Denver Nuggets got a lot better after they traded Carmelo Anthony. And it was a controversial move, and he didn't want to resign with the team, and he made the move and made Denver better. So it's like you can't be afraid. Kenyon, I didn't ask you yet. You're Masai. What are you doing?
I'm updating my LinkedIn profile. That's the very first thing that I'm going to be doing. Just in case. Just in case.
Hello to everyone who's joined us, by the way. Adam.
Yeah, I'm seeing the Raptors Live TV crew.
Yep. All you guys, thank you. I'll put your stuff up here and try to answer your questions. Thank you all for joining us. JD, thank you for waking up. Go ahead, Kenyon.
And also, I hope JD is doing well because I know he was feeling under the weather. So,
Yes.
you know, shouts to you really quickly. So this is telling of the season, right? Okay, I'm gonna read the injury report from the Raptors side of things for the next game. I'm sorry, my Nita Halls. Okay, so apparently OG is gonna be out, Doubt out. Otto we already knew was out. Pascal rest, and Fred rest. Okay. That tells you everything that you need to know about the season. Okay. We are not prepping for anything. Okay. We are prepping this. I forget who I said it to out of you guys, but I said this franchise, these guys in the front office are ready to be like, okay, we do most of our work because they've said this. We do most of our work in the off season. We do work throughout the year, scouting and stuff like that, but we really get busy in the off season. They're ready to get to work, right? They're like, come on, can we get this over with? Lose to Chicago, you get your extra money. So big win there. Woo! MLSC. We won because we get an extra game where people can pay money, pay crazy prices, and enjoy DeMar slapping us up a bit. Okay. We also get the chance to have an 11th pick. So to me, if I'm Masai, I know he is a really good scout. I would be looking towards the future. If you're asking me what I think that they should do, I would be trying to get a second pick in this draft. And
absolutely,
if you really feel like you need OG, which I do see the value in OG, I'm not discounting the value in OG. I've had many a debate on this. Okay, I like OG a lot. I've always seen Pascal, OG, and Barnes as not as redundant as some people seem to think. But I would prioritize Siakam and Barnes. There's no reason not to. And I always say, like, you're like, oh, well, why don't you build around Barnes? Well, technically, if you build around Barnes, you're building around Siakam. So you might as well build around Siakam, and then thus you still have the players that work for Barnes. So that's where I'm going. Try to get a second pick in this draft, and try to keep your job. So then go from there.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question. How long of a rope does Masai and Bobby Webster get to fix this roster? Beyond, you look like you're ready to answer that question. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very delicate question from a standpoint of office politics, right? So, especially how long this season's been. We forgot a story that came out so much earlier in the season when it blew up and you found out the whole deal at Rogers and why, with the Shaw deal, I believe was all part of it. Ironically, just a couple of days ago, it finally wrapped up. But the spill out of this, one of the things that came out was, that Ed Rogers is not a big fan of Masai Ujiri, right? At least not pay him that much money. Okay, that's the piece.
Yeah.
I don't think if Masai was doing a discount, I think he would be fine with it. But he's not willing to pay him that much money, as much as he would like in this case, or what the going rate was for someone of Masai's stature. I think that can't be ignored in this type of time when you have these type of scenarios playing out. That yes, Masai just got the renewal a couple of years ago, but the quote Janet Jackson is, "What have you done for me lately?" Right? So like here we go. Now it's 2 years. The first year wasn't too bad with the 48 wins. You picked Scotty, so you're on a high. You get a little leeway there. But I think at this point, MLSC and another part about it is the MLSC lost so much money with the Tampa. And then even the year after, they had so many games where they had to have half capacity or no capacity. That's a lot of money lost. And they're looking to get some big playoff runs. So that's the tensions going on here, right? So it's like MLSC is like, wait, if you were doing, if you want to be the rebuild guys, they're like, hold on one second. We lost how much money in this case here? We can't be rebuilding. And then there's the other part of it from the standpoint of the basketball-wise standpoint of like, okay, we can't give up on players that we think are really good players that we've built up and get rid of them. But I think there is a thread that they can push through in this case as far as meet the middle. And I think what Hopeful is saying is like the ideal scenario where I see it as like there's like three phases of this, where there's the big phase, which is Fred gone, OG gone, whoever comes back to them. There's the second phase of it where it's like Fred gone, OG is still there, but you can still find stuff out of the Fred situation. Maybe it might help you, plus you're drafting. There's a third option, which is really the minor option. This will tell me a lot. If it ends up Fred, say Fred walks, Fred even stays, and you end up moving someone like Boucher for maybe like a first round pick deep in the first round. Me, that's all right, but that's not really the type of move really you're saying, okay, we're really looking to make a move. That to me is like a very defensive move. So we will find out very soon by draft day what type of scenario we're talking about here. And I think those, at least in my head, that's how I compartmentalize it, those three segments. I mean, there's technically a fourth one, but I don't see it ever happening at this point, which is the Siakam move. I don't see the Siakam move happening at this point, which is which is like we're swinging for the fences and now we're burning it all down for the rebuild. But I don't see that at this point because I think MLSC wants some playoff money and they don't want to burn it all down for that reason.
Coach, how big of a rope does Masai have left?
Masai's done the ultimate thing by bringing this team a championship. He could do go whatever direction he wants to. I think he's got approval from ownership. If he wants to try and win now and build with this team, I think he can. If he said tomorrow, we're rebuilding after the season, he can do that. I think he's earned it. I don't see Masai wanting to tear this down and rebuild. It's never been his style to do. It's been about just player development, trades, draft. I think that's what they'll do regardless of where they pick. Like these guys have said, I want a second first-round pick. This is a deep draft. The next year's draft is not as good. You don't have a pick anyway. Why not try to get a second first-round pick in this draft too? And by trading, if there was a mega deal with OG or with Fred, that could give you that opportunity to do so. And if it was me, I'm probably looking at that idea moving forward. But I think Masai's fine. Bobby? That I don't know.
He's the forgotten man sometimes, right? It's like, he's the one GM in the league that gets forgotten. Because a lot of people identified their front office by the GM, unlike Toronto, where it's the president of basketball operations. There's a few teams like that, but Bobby's one of the few that gets to kind of lay low undercover in this case compared to other teams. I guess Philly's another one where it's like Morey is the face, even though I think he's president of basketball operations. But so you don't really think of the GM in this case for Philadelphia. He's kind of the face for both of them. But Bobby in this case is a guy I'll be curious to know what his philosophy is maybe versus Masai. He's his own man, so I'll be curious to see what he's thinking versus maybe what Masai's thinking. Because it felt like one thing when all these rumors were going on with the trade deadline, and then for it to just be pretty much, I wouldn't use this colorful a term as our colleague here, Kenyon. Like we get the idea in this case. It was not satisfying. Let's put it that way. When it was all said and done, and I do wonder if the front office was struggling between different factions. I will say one thing: ownership, though. As long as Tannenbaum's still in the role he's in, Masai's gonna be all right. That's his man.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to Kenyon, but I have a few questions here. I'll start with Raptors. Dan, would you guys trade up to move in the upcoming draft, or do you prefer a second round pick? Unless you're getting Victor or Scoot, I'd rather have two picks than one. You guys want to answer that quickly?
You guys can go first if you want.
Go ahead, man.
Okay, I mean, I guess that's true. We do talk about the draft a lot.
we're getting to the draft. We're getting to the draft now.
But it's like that's all there is.
Kevin calculations rolling his head and all sorts of stuff. So don't be bashful now.
I mean, I'll just say it depends. It really depends on who's available and because there's certain things. The combine will come up, and that might change a lot of people's opinion, including my own. Then there's obviously the one-on-one workouts and stuff like that. I would have the option, but you're not going to get Wemby. Okay, I'm just telling you that right now. So if you get Wemby, that person should be fired. Yes. You could get Scoot, but it depends on only certain situations would allow for that. So other than that, I think there's this middling area where, look, there's a chance we could win the lottery, people. So keep that in mind. But, there is a middling kind of area that we could sit in the draft where you're like 7th and not necessarily be happy, because it's like, okay, if you're gonna pick like a Jarris Walker or something where, you know, there's already a lot of redundancy, the dude can't shoot, you're looking at the same type of thing at that point, you know. And then the problem with that too is that the teams that have 2 picks that you would want, like Orlando, they don't want necessarily, like, I don't think that they necessarily want Walker either. So, you know, it'll be interesting. It's going to be an exciting offseason. I think this is one of the most exciting off seasons that we've ever had. I'd rather have a second first rounder.
Beyond.
Well, I'll start backwards and say I'd rather have a second first round as well too. This draft is very deep. It's deep. It's deep. It's high but deep in this case. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of good high end talent, but I don't think the talent is like, you know, Wemby. Excluding Wemby, I wouldn't even put Scoot in this case. Excluding Wemby, I think everybody else in this case here, the degrees in this case you're looking at, I don't think is that concerning.
It's
like
very close. Yeah,
I'm not sitting here losing sleep. It's like, oh man, we missed out on Scoot. I mean, no disrespect their coach, but like he doesn't have that gravitas where I'm sitting there going, like, oh man, we lost out on Scoot. I think it'd be fine if you got somebody three, 4 positions down. I think also too, we were talking about last night because we have nothing better to do in this case here, I guess. But I think strangely enough, you know, you look at some of the, you know, Rafael Barlow and some of the other folks talking on their big boards now. We're getting the draft top. There's a trend that you see happening here with the first 6 or 7 picks. Most of those guys are not great shooters, and we know there's anything the Raptors need is a guy that can shoot. And it seems like the second half of the lottery has the better shooters. So I'm not even sure is that advantageous for you to move that far up, because then you're going to pick another guy in this case that you have to wait to teach how to shoot. And it's like, we don't have time to wait for another guy to teach how to shoot at this point here. So I would, you know, it's almost like I would prefer 2 guys that are in the middle of the lottery, like 8 and 12, or, you know, 7 and 10 or something like that. If that's what it works out to in some ways, unless you get, Mr. Big Wemby in this case here. But like everybody else, I think, you know, right now we need to build up our talent pool. And I think watching the Celtics game the other night, it was quite apparent when they got the benches how drastically bad I've been saying it all year, how bad our talent is off the bench in this case. Not necessarily just off the bench with the young players, right? If you feel comfortable going into next season, folks, with your young players that you're building around, quote, the future, with Scotty and then Precious and then Flynn or even Banton, that's what you're telling me is the future of the Raptors? Just go and look at any team around the league. I mean, we make fun of Houston, but at least Houston's got some blue chippers. Like, you know, you go down the league, you go watch Oklahoma City when they're bringing waves of dudes off the bench in this case that were probably better than most of the guys I mentioned here, not named Scotty. So, like, we need some more guys that are kind of more Scotty's level that could not only raise the the level of this team, but also can grow with him. Where it's like, okay, this is a legitimate nucleus of a next Raptor phase. So that's why I want the 2 picks for both reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have Coach answer this as well. Where we're drafting right now, depending on whether we beat Chicago or not, we could get Grady Dick, and I'd be very happy with that because that man can shoot. Coach, 1 pick or 2?
2. 1 through 3, I think likely we're going to forget that. That's not going to happen. I don't see why any of those teams in the top 3 want to trade their pick, especially in a deep draft like this. I think the value from like 4 to about 16, 17, there isn't a lot of difference actually in what you might get. The only thing that changes is the money. You're paying more for someone who's drafted 4th or 5th than someone who's drafted 16th or 17th. So I don't see too much of a difference from that. Kind of like what Beyond said too. It's about building up the talent base. That's going to be the key to this team. I sit on one of the Raptor spaces where we are a 500 team. A game above, a game below. That's what we are. Is that going to make it in the East? No. That gets you exactly where they're at right now, 9th. And why go into the luxury tax on a team that's 9th place? The ownership's not going to do that. I look at a team like the Pacers, and before you say, like, well, they're outside the plane and stuff like that, wait for a few more years. That talent base is starting to build up there in Indiana with Nemhard and Neesmith and Halliburton, Mathurin. Like, they have some good young pieces. Now it's just putting the right veterans around them now. we got to start bringing in some quality, higher end first round talent moving forward. And I think you can do it in this draft by getting 2 first round picks. Our pick, which will be around that 11, 12, I think you can get one more around that too.
Great answers. I got one more question. I'm going to let Kenyon answer the Masai question of how long a Roache has left. Raptors Dan, I don't like this question, but I'm going to put it up. If this happens, I'm going to quit being a Raptors fan. That's all I'm going to say.
Woo. Go ahead. I know I want Kenyon to go ahead.
Go ahead, Kenyon.
Kenyon, look at Kenyon's face.
Look, okay, I think you have to understand that coaches and GMs see things very differently, and they're supposed to. So for one, I think it's a bad like I go back to like Stan Van Gundy. You never you don't want to be wearing 2 hats for too long if you don't have to. And like I think you have to just no. I just no.
Just say no. Just say no. That's it.
No, it's like the other day, and I forget where I said it. I think I popped into like Zazu's space briefly, and then they were talking about like, oh, what if they bring the team back, like the band back, and I'm just like, please, just no. I'm at the point where I would, just for entertainment value, I'd almost rather see Kyrie on this team. Okay, just something different.
My God.
Okay, and that is not saying that I do want to see that, but at least it would be more entertaining than just seeing the same nonsense again and again and again. Like we see the problems. As someone else said, you have to be practically blind. So yeah, and then to put Nurse, like, what has he done to deserve being a GM? Like I just don't understand. Okay, like. I don't even know if he wants to be a GM, to be perfectly honest.
That's where I was going with it. I don't think he has the temperament to be a GM.
No.
Based on how he manages his rotations, he'd be making so many impulsive decisions before you can blink twice that we're just trading X and Y after 3 weeks. I just don't see him being a GM material. However, to Raptors' standpoint, the question might seem like out there now, but if you had to say 6 months ago and say, things worked out where it's like, okay, things didn't work out, I could easily see them moving him up to front office type of thing. I don't think that's as crazy as it seems. But because things have unraveled so badly, no. But, like, if this was 6 months ago, I don't think that would be so preposterous a question at some point. Like,
Raptors, Dan, the only way I say yes to this is if Nick Nurse's doppelganger, Coach Roache, is the guy who's taking over as GM.
And I'll just quickly say, like, because I see Raptors Dan talking about Brad. The thing is, you can't just extrapolate one situation to another. Brad was also kind of done with being coaching, with being a coach. I don't think that Nick is done coaching, and if he is, I don't think he immediately wants to take that and jump to it. But also, when Brad did it, he was still winning at the time.
Yeah.
Well, Casey just moved up, right, too. So that's probably maybe what's in his mind as well, too.
I'll just say this about that question, because Houston's having a fire sale next year. Everybody's going. You don't think they might be looking at Nick to come in and be the GM when he was their G League coach at one time before he came to the Raptors? I'm just saying that's not a far.
To Houston?
I'm just saying that's not a far-fetched idea to believe that maybe there's something offered to him about him doing something in Houston.
Coach, you missed the opportunity, man. You had to do your Brian Windhorst, because something strange is going on in Houston. Something strange.
Yes.
Because I just heard rumors about Harden going back there. Something strange is going on in Houston. That's all I got to say about that. It's, there might be more than what the coach's point. Might be more than meets the eye with that. So,
because it makes no sense. Why would Nick go and coach Houston? He can't coach our young team. When you go to coach their young team?
He hates young players. I know. It makes no sense at all. He would want to go to a Lakers or a Clippers more than he'd want to go to a Houston team, which he's not going to go to anyway because they got their coaches. But the Nick Nurse situation, does he just coach Canada? We'll see. But I don't want him coaching Canada either. But we'll see what happens with good old Saint Nick. But we'll always have Nick here because Coach will always be here. And as you can see, He looks exactly like Nick. So this is a really good question considering Nick Nurse's future, which we all think is going to be gone. Let's see what everyone thinks about this. Let me just pull this up. How do you guys feel about Ime coaching the Raptors? Hide your wives would be my first thing that I would say. After that, he's a great coach. Could he fix the Raptors? Not as currently constructed, but he's not the worst choice in the world. What do you guys think? Kenyon's face. I'm going to start with Kenyon. What do you think, Kenyon?
Oh my gosh! Like I just look. I mean, I don't.
Raptors, Dan, you've broken the space. You've broken this channel already.
This is not like an indictment on Boston, but I think that we have better talent from a perspective of the thing that Ime is prone to being weak to, and so from that perspective, no offense to Boston, but I think that he might have more trouble here. And so, unless he's doing, you're cracking up beyond. I'm trying to be diplomatic here as best as I can.
Go with it, and then once I heard a few things, like, oh, this is where he's going.
Yeah, because we talked about it, right? But it's true, and it's like
a different way, so it stuck up on me at first. It's like,
oh my god,
yeah, like it's like my friend. I'm not gonna say his name either because I don't want to get him in trouble. But he was here, and like it was the first time he had been here. To this part of Canada, and his head was on a swivel, right? And it's like so, and like this dude he has Nia Long, and he still had his head on a dang swivel, and not only that, but on a swivel within the front office. It's like, dude, anyone but here, okay? Like that's it. You can do it. I hate how people are like, well, it wasn't on the court. What do you expect him to be on the bench? Hey, baby, in the middle of the game, like what? There are levels to this, but this is crazy. So look, all respect to Ime, okay. I think he gets a little bit too much credit for Brad Stevens because I really didn't see a drastic difference. And I'll just jump to one of the other questions that I saw just about some of the other coaches. I would rather have Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson. Yeah. So Kenny Atkinson would make a way better use of Koloko. So I spoke about this on like the Live by the Three podcast, and basically I just said like, look, he kind of takes a little bit from of a more conservative approach to defense, but he's smart with it. And so the thing is that the Bucks will always sell out on 3-point shooters in a particular manner, right? Or Nurse, he will always sell out on the corners. This guy will do it in a very smart manner. They will sell out on 3-point shooters depending on their 3-point percentage. That's probably the best way that you want to help. So it could be help one pass away, but they're reading the scouting report, and that's what dictates it. So it's a little bit of a higher IQ defensive system. And then I didn't see any problems with his offensive system in terms of nets the last time we saw Kenny Atkinson. So, and I don't think he should have been fired. I do think you'll see sometimes they'll go under 3, so they won't shoot the gaps on 3 on pick and roll defense as much as sometimes we do. It'll be less of a gambling style, but that's probably not the worst thing. So I think that there are other guys with less, from an HR risk management side of things. There is probably an easier sell, even from a PR standpoint, than having a guy with such a blemish on his record and really only 1 year of coaching under his belt.
Beyond.
Okay, I'm going to split the difference here. With Ime, let's table his indiscretions. I'm just going to look at him as a coach from that standpoint. I don't think he should be hired for that reason, but I think it's a very awkward situation from a PR standpoint. As Kenyon said, I think we got enough drama on this team right now that the last thing you want to do is add more to it. However, from a coaching standpoint, I would disagree a little bit with Kenyon on the standpoint that I think there's an element that he brought that Stevens could not bring. Didn't matter after 7 years we're coaching in Boston. And this is the part that the Raptors do need. And there's a couple of things the Raptors do need. And I think some of the things he brought out is the interpersonal and getting the best out of his best players and making sure they're all in line of what they need to do and who does what. because there's always an issue between 1, 2, and 3. And when I refer to 1, 2, and 3, I'm talking about Brown, Tatum, Smart, right? And in the sense of this case here, he got away in this case not only for Brown and Tatum to play nice in the sandbox with each other. He was able to actually make sure in this case that they elevated their games in this case to get into a certain level in this case that they didn't get to before as far as their reach of their talent. And he got Smart to stay disciplined enough. I don't think it's a coincidence that he ended up getting DPOY the year that Ime is coaching. He got disciplined enough in this case here how he should handle things, how he should deal with stuff, how he should manage things, how he should run a team. No one ever thought Smart could be a starting point guard. People were like, but he arguably was their second best player in that finals, after Brown. And so I think that's the elements that I do think that are required for this team to some extent. But now on the other side, Atkinson in this case here, when it comes to development, is what I think is part of his strength. Where it's like you have a lot of young players where I think someone like him, who's like seems to be a very good organizer, because God knows we need that. He would be very ideal in that sense as well too. So in my mind, to kind of split the difference a little bit, I kind of like someone like Stackhouse, who I think in this case here could probably split the difference of two. We already know his development side of things with the 905. All right, so from that side of things. And we also know in this case here, he was very meticulous from what I understand as a 905 coach. He had them guys on their P's and Q's. And also, too, ain't no one getting no back talk to Stackhouse. I'll tell you right now, okay? Don't be gross about their minutes, okay? That can get sorted out right then and there. So he, to me, kind of splits the difference with the other two guys. And more I'm kind of like the opportunity for him because I think he also gives a fresh face, but yet he still has an old face, right? He's part of the organization. In a lot of ways, he's like Masai, just coach version. Left, went away, did his thing, came back to the organization. I think Stackhouse would be an ideal because I think some ways this team does need an ex-player mindset a little bit. And I'm not saying I have any issue with guys come up and coaching trees, not at all, but we tend to go down that road a lot, right? And I think maybe an ex-coach might be ideal because I'll put it this way, I mentioned to the guys. At this point with Siakam, no more hitting jump shots in the summertime or shooting three-point shots is going to get into where we all wanted to get to, and maybe even your lovely wife in this case here. No, none of that's going to get there. At this point now, it's all about mind and heart, and how can you get him to get the next level to believe, to empower him, right? And Nick Nurse has done none of that in my mind for him or Scotty or any of the players, to be honest with you. So, most times usually you find he's tearing down dudes more than anything else a lot of times. So what I look at is like if you get a guy can reach that part, wherever it is, bring out more dog in him, find more ways to get him in the plays that are comfortable for him to build up his confidence in certain situations. That's what I'm talking about. Where I would prefer someone perhaps like a Stackhouse in this case. In that, so that's why I look at. I got no problem with Atkinson. If Ime didn't have the issues, I would love it. But hey.
Yeah, I've talked to Kenyon about Stackhouse, who coaches Vanderbilt University right now. I think he'd be a great choice because I think the Raptors, I agree with Beyond completely. They need an ex-player to really put them in their place. Coach, who do you like as the next coach of the Raptors?
Well, kind of like what Beyond said about Ime. Take the PR nightmare aside. Guy's a pretty good coach. Comes from the Popovich tree. He took that Boston team to the finals last year, and that was the best team in basketball from January on last year. There was no doubt it was the Boston Celtics. And one of the big things about coaching, head coaching, is managing egos. You got a lot of guys making a lot of money who can't really believe in themselves. I mean that in a good way. So it's about managing egos and managing accountability. Is there any accountability on this team right now? No, there's none.
Nope.
So I think Ime would help in that regards. I like what kind of like Beyond said too about Jerry Stackhouse, an interesting candidate as well. Because I know he applied for the job originally, but he didn't get it. Ime applied for the job too as well. He was one of the finalists and didn't get it. There's something about Kenny Atkinson being in that Golden State system and what he did in Brooklyn and bringing kind of that here. And I say that because of Mike Brown's success. Mike Brown was Steve Kerr's main assistant that last year in the championship run. And Kenny Atkinson was there too on that team. Just what Kenny Atkinson could bring to potentially this offense, kind of like what Kenyon said too about the defense. The defense on this team is so geared towards rotating, double team, in your face all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've watched Fred and Gary foul guys. They don't call it in the NBA, but their hands are all over them. There's such this gambling mentality right now. I want to see someone different who is going to bring a different defensive philosophy for this team. Because the best, was it the old saying, the best availability? No, the best availability is, or no, best ability is availability.
The best ability is availability.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
sorry. Yeah. And, you know,
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of guys in foul trouble because of this gambling style defense, which basically masks their pathetic offense. That's basically what it is.
Yep.
And I think there are definitely some good coaches out there. I know David Thorpe, he mentioned Ryan Pannone from the Pelicans. He said he's going to have a job someday. He's probably the best X's and O's guys he's ever been around. And they love him in New Orleans too, but they love Willie Green as well. So, you know, I would like to bring him on as an assistant next year. If you can't get him as head coach, bring this kid on as an assistant if he's great at X's and O's and stuff like that. This isn't just about a coach coming in. This could be about a whole new coaching staff teaching a whole new different philosophy for this team because they need a culture reset, probably from the coaching staff down to the players as well. This isn't just it's not just one, it's multiple things that need to happen.
Yeah, I've talked all year about how bad the defense has been because they're just getting blown by. The point of attack defense has been atrocious all year long, and I understood why people wanted shooting and they wanted better offense. But my God, if you defend like they defended against Boston yesterday, I don't care how much offensive weapons you have, you're going to lose. Look at the Golden State Warriors this year. They couldn't defend a stiff breeze, and they're at 500 along with the Raptors right now. So keep in mind, you can have all the shooting and offense you want, but if you're missing one of your better defenders, aka Andrew Wiggins, and you can't stop anybody, you're not going to win any games either. And so, from that respect, Ime taught the Celtics to stay in front of guys and body up guys, which is why Kevin Durant was so frustrated in that playoff series. I'd like the Raptors to play a little bit more defense like that instead of gambling for steals on every possession. I saw Sergio Scariolo, if that's how you say his name. I don't think he's going to be the coach. Who else do we got here? Earl Watson. Quick comment on Earl Watson.
I think he would be in the mix. I mean, the question is, how much is he involved with Nick? Because if you really want a fresh start, I think he's got his own ideas, so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's obviously been a head coach before, so I'm open to Earl Watson. He has relationships with some of the players, but that might be, in some ways, that might be a detriment. I think you might want a clean slate, someone that doesn't have any issues with anybody or agendas with anybody, and just say, hey, we're starting fresh. So, but I have no issue if it's Earl Watson as interviewing and see what he can do. But I think some of the other guys I would prefer before Earl Watson overall. So,
yeah. Kenyon, I'll ask you that question and also ask you on the rope that you would give Masai.
Yeah, you're still on this rope quick.
Oh yeah, no, you and I have talked about this, and I do want everyone to hear your thoughts on.
I mean,
on how,
if you win a championship, you have 5 years. I think next year is year 5. That's my opinion. Simple as that.
Yep.
So let's see what he does. Year 5. I think if he wins another championship, you get another 5 years. So. We're not saying that if he messes, if it doesn't go according to plan next year, you get rid of him. But I think next year is the last year where you could use that as an excuse of he won a championship for any sort of management. So I think, if you win a championship for any season in any major league sports, that has above X amount of teams in it, then I think you've earned yourself 5 years. And I think that he has another year, but obviously he knows that there is, like, for example, if you change the coach as a GM, you only have a certain amount of coaching changes.
Yeah.
So, and this is why I keep telling people you can't just change the coach. There's certain people that are like, oh, if you change the coach, then that'll fix everything. Will it? I don't know. I think it might fix some things. I don't think it fixes it enough. I think you still end up with a lot of problems. I think you still might have people being upset, and also within that, you can't just change the head coach. To go back to the original question that we were just on a second ago, because I really do think that you kind of want a regime change. Otherwise, you might have guys that you risk having some people undermine guys, or you still have favorites petitioning. It just you almost need to pull a Kyrie and walk around with Sage and everything around around the arena and just start fresh.
Gotcha. I see one more name here, AJ Griffin, who's the current assistant. I don't think he's ready to be the coach, and I don't want a Nick Nurse disciple. And so with that, I will move on to what makes us all smile, and that's the offseason and the draft. We have been doing a lot of draft coverage. Specifically, these three men here have been doing a lot of coverage on the draft and videos and looking at the future. I've looked at a few prospects. I'm very high on Grady Dick. I love Grady Dick in this draft. There are some other players that are more talented, but if I'm looking at the Raptors and everything that they need, he brings just about everything they need. 3-point shooting. He's very good running off the dribble. So the Raptors don't have a guy who runs off the ball to get shots, and they really need that to open up the spacing that Beyond the Locker Room always brings up. He's also very good off the dribble, shooting threes. He can dunk. For a white guy, this guy can dunk the basketball. I like it. And he can defend as well. So he may not be the flashiest prospect, but if I'm looking for a guy that's going to give me what the Raptors don't have, I like him, especially at the position we're at, because I think we're going to be 11 or 12. And it looks like he might drop to that, considering some of the guys that are moving up in the draft. So if we're just going to keep one pick and we get him, I'm not complaining. Beyond, who do you like in the draft for the Raptors?
Well, the scenario is if we only just stick with our pick.
Yeah, let's just say we're in the 11-12 range.
Right.
Let's just say that.
We probably will be. My first choice, I am still, I've been swayed a little bit here and there, but I am still swayed, based on where Keontae George is still my guy, kind of, man. I mean, overall, I just think that you're looking for as much upside as possible if you only got the one pick. And I think, to me, of all the guys that are in that range that are left back, he's the guy that could potentially be a star, more so than some of the other guys. I think my second choice, I'll leave it as my first choice. Just leave it as that. There's some other guys I do like. Of course, your man you just mentioned, he was one of my guys. It still is one of my guys. I ain't gonna lose sleep. We got him. Yeah, but I think just for to fill in as many needs on the offensive side of the ball, especially, George is where I'm leaning towards at the moment. If you had to take one, they had to give me one choice of the pick they had to make, and he was on the board. So, yeah.
Now I know Coach is a big fan of a certain player, but he may not be available because of how high he's jumped. But I'll let him answer the question before I do it for him.
If I had only had one choice, because I think where we pick, you always want to draft the best talent. But when you get Scotty and Pascal, Fit's going to be a little bit in this picture as well, just a bit. I think if I had one pick, I'm going with Cason Wallace.
Yep.
He is just something that I think that we need. 6'4" point guard. I'm just looking at some of the other point guards in this draft, kind of outside of Skooks. Really don't have his numbers, but he has the highest advanced numbers of all of them. Nick Smith, of Jalen Hood. He's got the best offensive win shares, defensive win shares, box plus or minus. Those are the highest numbers. I like his ceiling, though, too. You're looking at someone who could be like a Drew Holiday, potentially. He can shoot. I think he's good for 36 to 40% from three in this league. And I know I've had this discussion with Beyond, too. There's something about Kentucky guards making it in the NBA for whatever reason. It's Maxey, it's Fox, it's I know I'm Malik Monk. There's all kinds. Quickly.
And this guy called SGA, you might have heard of him before.
Yeah. He's from this province. So I think if I only had one pick and I'm just looking at, okay, who could help the best with Siakam and Barnes moving forward, but also have this kind of upside about him as well, where he is a good defender and he can shoot the three. I think I got to go with Cason Wallace.
You mentioned my man Keaton Sharp.
Yes, guys that we could have had that we can't have anymore. It's very, very sad. I'm not going to get into the tragic deal because I don't want to trigger Kenyon. Kenyon, we talked a lot about a lot of different players. You've mentioned somebody that I won't mention that you really like. I wonder if this is who you're going to say, but tell me who you would draft in that spot.
I'm assuming you mean Cam Whitmore, but I'm not going to mention it because we won't have a chance. He's that's only if we move up. So if we moved up and we got a second pick, that would be who I would pick for the first one. And then, I would look in another direction like a Casey Wallace. But I mean, it's please lose tomorrow. As long as
please lose tomorrow. Please lose tomorrow.
Please. I mean, guys, we are clearly trying because,
I'm sorry. I want us to lose to the Bulls. I'm so done with this season. I'm a fan. I love the Raptors. I want them to lose tomorrow. I want them to lose tomorrow, and I want them to lose Wednesday. I want them to lose. I'm sorry, guys. I do not want to see this team get swept in the first round. I don't want that pain. Okay. Go ahead, Kenyon.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you root for the rest of OKC, like OKC to win the. I think they have one or two games left. I'm please do what you can, SGA, Kentucky all the way. I think if you only have one guard, Anthony Black. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry. I know that you two do not like Anthony Black.
Anthony Black. No.
I just wanted to trigger some people. Oh, we lost him.
Beyond's had enough. He's done. No Anthony Black.
No, it's a tough thing. I mean, first of all, I will say you're right. We will have a conversation. You wanted to talk about some guys, so you'll be on my channel this week actually. And the Keontae George will be posted hopefully tomorrow or Monday, depending on when I get there. I don't know. It's tough. I'm actually more undecided than I was before. I will say if he is there, you take Cason Wallace, you're happy. Like for sure. And if it was between Grady Dick and Cason Wallace, I'd still choose Cason Wallace. If you give me Taylor Hendricks, as much as you guys piqued my interest on Taylor Hendricks, Cason Wallace, right? Because Cason Wallace does solve a lot. I think he does have the upside, but he can instantly he would be more of an impact player than most of the other guys on both ends of the ball, without question, day one. And with the upside. And that's kind of hard to go against. Now, I don't know. It's always tough to judge the potential of these guys, but a lot of people have compared him to Drew Holiday. I'd be fine with Drew Holiday. He may not be a superstar, but I don't know if you necessarily need a superstar. But I think if you're talking about a potential an all NBA defensive prospect with the juice to do what you need on the offensive ball. Maybe he gets an all-star or two. Maybe he could push 1 year or two at all NBA. This is like highest outcome. Definitely will be a rotation player right away and has upside from there. Yeah, I mean, I lean towards Cason Wallace for sure.
Coach, you are a big fan of Taylor Hendricks. I like him as well. If by some chance he drops, because guys, I think this draft is so wide open that you could have a lot of surprises and a lot of guys going up or down depending on who teams like. So let's say would you draft Taylor Hendricks over Cason Wallace, Coach?
I mean, I think the upside for Hendricks might be higher than Wallace actually, but in the end, I'd probably say no. I think Cason is the right fit, assuming they're going with Scotty and Pascal moving forward. I understand that you want to draft the best talent overall, and I think Hendricks is a big time talent. And like Beyond and I have had discussions in Kenyon too about Vision 6-9, which I'm actually starting not to like this iteration of Vision 6-9 anyway. But Hendricks actually is what you would want to see from that. Someone who can shoot 40% from three, someone who can block maybe a block or 2 blocks per game, someone who is, yes, he is 6'9", and he's quite athletic. if we were to draft Hendricks, like I'm totally fine with it. Just like your guy Grady Dick too. Grady Dick next to Pascal and Scotty.
I like it, man.
That's a good fit. Same with Beyond's guy Keontae George. It's a good fit. I've kind of what Kenyon said. I've kind of gone back and forth too. I'm like, that's why I kind of sit between 4 and 15. The value between the guys is not a lot of difference. Only the money.
No.
It's the only thing that's different. It's the money.
Yeah. I'm gonna put this up here. Assuming Kaysen Hendricks and Gary Cardone, should we flip our pick for 2 Nets first? Kenyon's already saying no. Beyond no. No, I don't like this move either. Coach? No, I'm not doing that. No.
The Nets picks are 22 and 21 this year. So I don't know if they're talking about this year or in the future, but if it's this year, absolutely not.
He's talking about that, but I mean, I'll throw it out to the guys and yourself, but I think you can get one of those picks by, say, trading, I don't know, a Boucher maybe in some type of deal, in this case, a 3-way deal, and you can get one of those picks that way. Even at 20, like a guy like Chris Murray is available down there. If I can get the Nets pick and get Chris Murray, hey, I'll do it. Jordan Hawkins, I'm not sure where Jordan Hawkins is now. Oh no, he's moving up, man.
Is he moving up now, Jordan Hawkins, because of his
he's
crazy...
around our territory? Funny enough, he is around our area.
Okay, so I will mention, if we can't get Grady Dick, Jordan Hawkins, I like him. I mean, I like Jordan Hawkins a lot. He's an electric guard. He's someone who could open up the game for us. I like him a lot. It all depends. If you're getting rid of Fred, do you need a point guard to replace him, or you just put Scotty there and get a shooter? That's sort of where I'm at with it.
The Hawkins thing you can't take away, and I mean, true, they've had a different coach, but UConn players do tend to translate well in the NBA. So very similar to Villanova guys. There's certain colleges. We mentioned Kentucky already. Whereas, you get a good guy for him as a pretty good prospect, they're pretty much going to be a very good professional player in the NBA. So, on that front, Jordan Hawkins has that going for him. He can score. There's no 2 ways about it. He might be a bit more dynamic than, say, Grady in this case, a little bit. But, I'm not sure defensively. I haven't really dug into his defensive side of things just yet. But he is moving up, number 1 with a bullet, as they say, up the chart. So,
in Masai. I want tall players that can shoot, dribble, pass, and drive. Okay. Yeah, okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't disagree with that. It's just easier said than done, Your
lips to the God's ears. I hope so.
You want to play small ball with tall players, which Milwaukee has been doing actually for a few years now.
Milwaukee, I got to say, on the Bucks, they did a masterful job of building around Giannis. I can't. Does someone know who the GM is? Because I can't remember the GM's name. But
it was John Hammond. It was John Hammond. I think he went to he's consulting, I think, for the Magic. But now I can't think. But like you said, how they built around Giannis by putting shooting and guys who can create their own shot, because Giannis isn't, he's not like he's KD on the perimeter or anything. Right. But Middleton, I think Brook Lopez is really what's the major piece around Giannis because he can shoot.
And Drew Holiday's an all-defensive player who can lead the offense. He can get you 40 or he can get you 12 assists, and he's an all NBA defender. There's not a single player on the Bucks that can't shoot threes. Outside of Giannis, every single player can hit a 3 on that team. Even the darkest bench player can hit a 3 on that team. That's how you build around Giannis. And if you look at the Raptors, they're not a whole lot different. You've got Barnes and Siakam, who are not going to be ever great 3-point shooters. I mean, Siakam's at 34, which is freaking great. But I don't think Scott Barnes is ever going to shoot higher than 30% from 3. And so if you're going to have those 2 guys lead your team, you need some 3-point shooting around them. And now you got Pirtle, who is only going to add to that. So you got 3 front court players that can't shoot. So you really need to have 2 shooters in that starting lineup. And I don't want one of them to be Gary Trent Jr. So we need a 3-point shooter in this draft. That's all I'm going to say. So,
do you mind if I just quickly chime in on the Jordan Hawkins point?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jordan Hawkins, to me, I think he's interesting, but I don't think he provides quite enough juice for for what we want from a pick. So I think, say Kaysen, and say the only guard left is Anthony Black, and you say, okay, do I go in a completely other direction, or do I pick Jordan Hawkins? Now I think there's other guys you could still go for, is what I'm trying to get at. Jordan Hawkins is a really good shooter. I think he's really good at getting like some of the movement shooting that you want, but it's that middle range shot and some of the straight line drives that he's not quite as good at. And so to me, I don't think that he provides. Like, I'm not here. Grady is at the lower end in terms of prospect upside that I would go for. Anything below that, I think you are better off going for the higher upside guys. So I would much rather have Rupert or some of these other guys rather than kind of going for, well, he will fit and going from that. And just in terms of Barnes, just really quickly, I will just push back a bit. I mean, he's a second-year player. I do think that he can get up to above 30% for sure. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a 40% shooter. That's a whole other thing. No. But I think that 30%. I think we could aim a little bit higher for Barnes for someone with his talent level. And so yeah, I'll say that.
The thing with Scott is, I don't want him to be a three-point shooter. I want him to play more like a Giannis, where he's trying to, go downhill and try to use his strength to beat guys inside. Or make a pass from inside like a Magic Johnson. I would prefer he not be sitting out at the 3-point line, but that's all roster construction, which we're going to get to. There's a question here. Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
Speaking of Scotty, I hear that he's playing tomorrow. Why?
I don't know. Because he's young? I don't know.
He's holding his wrist. He's holding his knee. He's holding something. Why are you going to risk that when you potentially are going to go into the playoffs? That makes absolutely no sense.
Maybe he has to play. Maybe he has to play.
Punishment.
Let Gary get his conditioning back and jack up 30 shots tomorrow. Don't let Scotty run the risk of getting hurt tomorrow.
I don't think any of them should be playing tomorrow. But Scott probably wants to play because he's not comfortable right now. Maybe he wants to be ready for Wednesday. I don't know. I mean, this is the same Scotty who played with a bad ankle towards the end of last year and it affected him in the playoffs. So you think he would have learned his lesson. But I just think he's young and wants to play. But I wouldn't be playing him. I would tell him, no, son, sit down. I wanted to bring this up. Beyond, this is you. This question's for you. Go ahead, buddy. You
really want to start something on here right now today.
Yeah.
Look, let me preface it by saying I have no issues with Pirtle. I think he's a fine man. I think he seems like a nice man. I would say Pirtle at this point here, he will be our starting center next year. So let me just make that very clear.
Okay.
I mentioned this point on Spaces. I'm not sure this is where this is coming from, but I think there is a scenario that could play out depending on how the offseason progresses for Koloko, where you can start seeing the two of them at some point next year, especially depending if they have a new coach. And that could be very different in this case because a new coach might have no cares or whims of who's doing what. And if that is the case, then you can see a scenario where, we have the old tandem question at some point where a transition happens. Maybe they play a certain way. Maybe closing lineups end up being Koloko because he's good enough. He's strong enough. He has better movement at that point. That you could play a finishing five with him in it. That's where I was getting at. And I think maybe that's where the thought process might be, but that's where I'm getting at. And I think that moving into your next year, which would be Koloko's third year, at that point he's about, 25 at that point? I would expect Koloko to start moving into his prime, and he should at that point be a player, if not as good as Pirtle, and maybe at some point actually being, at that point maybe even be a bit better, especially on the offensive end. Because I think
that brings me
right.
I hear you.
No, I'm just saying the coach in this case plays a lot into that a lot. Because if Nick Nurse is not the coach next year, all bets are off of what could be possible for a player like Koloko. All bets are off.
Do we have to get rid of Chris Boucher to make sure Koloko gets minutes?
I mean, we should get rid of him anyways.
Exactly. I think so.
Like,
No, but
what are we talking about?
To me, Koloko did not get the minutes because Boucher was there.
Because we established that Boucher a year ago. This is from Nurse's own mouth that he's not a center. So I don't think that he ate into his minutes at all this year.
Okay.
Let's put it
I
this
just
way.
don't understand Koloko not playing this year. I don't get it.
Here's where your concern would be here, Reese. Next year, Boucher is on this team. In order for your man Grady, in this case, to get minutes, that's who you should be concerned about. Because
bye, Boucher. Bye.
All of a sudden, the Boucher talk is all right to move him down. Because that's the person you're looking at. The first round pick is possibly, especially if they get a front court or like a swing man first round pick, it's his minutes, lesser extent maybe precious, but that tandem, someone's got to go for you to get that guy to get minutes. And if we get 2 picks, well, the Wonder Twins at that point, man.
Coach, where are you on Boucher?
I didn't want them to resign him last year.
Oh, geez. There you go.
It's just I get it. He works hard. He actually plays his role fairly well. But this year I've seen too many defensive mistakes out there. The closeouts. Yeah. The lost spacing on the zone. Like you see guys pointing like, hey, cover, and he's just, it's almost like that he's lost or something like that. And I just think moving forward too, I'm more, like Beyond said, I'm more inclined to develop Koloko and Precious at this point.
Yeah, I'm getting comments on Boucher, and listen. I'm just gonna say this. I'm not gonna call any names out. Chris Boucher could never be a shooting guard / small forward who can dribble the basketball. If you've ever watched this man try to dribble the basketball, it's an automatic turnover. So that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything else. Does anyone disagree with this? That's on this panel right now.
That's a discussion. Okay, fair enough. I think Boucher is. I think you squeezed out as much as you can squeeze out Boucher at this point.
Yeah, he's not. Fair. He's not getting any better. He's not getting. Well, maybe he gets worse. But
I think sometimes fans kind of forget how old he is. Right? They just think that because when he plays and when he came in the league, because I think he's probably a 5-year vet at this point. They think, oh, he must be like 24, 25, or 26. Well, like the guy's 30 or 31 years old. Like he's not a spring chicken. So like I think sometimes that fools people. Sometimes think there's still opportunity for development. Like no, there's not. He is what he is.
I think Kenyon.
I think Reese, what hurts Boucher's a little bit, and I'll even say like Thad and Precious too. It's the redundancy on this team. Like it's too bad that he's 6'9" and that he's just not a good shooter as well. Like at times he's shown that he can shoot a bit, but I just think the Vision 6'9" and the redundancy has really affected how we view some of these players too, including myself.
Just for the record, so for people who weren't on Raptors Live TV, I'm gonna do my best Coach Roache impression. Vision 6'9". Take that for data. Coach Roache has had enough of this 6'9" vision, and I don't blame him.
This iteration, I want to be clear, not the theory that you can switch on defense. What I'm seeing yesterday with this roster construction and how it's implemented with the guys with their certain skill sets, that I'm done with. That makes zero sense at all.
The funny part is they don't switch until they got Pirtle. They didn't switch. That's the part that made me crack up. Technically, you're supposed to be switching these guys. They don't switch.
They also didn't cut until Thad got here.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know how you implement a system and then don't use it for its strengths in this case here, and you're blitzing everybody in this case for double teams. Where it's like the point of having guys all the same height is that you don't have to double guys.
No, and they can't shoot either. None of these 6'9" guys can shoot, so you don't have to worry about them bombing it out from 3. I mean, you got Precious out there who's trying to still shoot threes. You got Scott who can't shoot threes. Pascal's improved a little bit. Boucher's he's at 30% this year. They can't shoot. That's the problem. But Kenyon, Listen,
Kenyon, tell us how you feel right now.
Like I could just see his face. Like, get it out, Kenyon. This is a therapy session.
I need
just
Advil.
get it all out.
This is why I need Advil. Because no, I think Vision 6ix9ine. Again, really briefly, it wasn't actually Masai whoever said I believe in Vision 6ix9ine. He just, what his actual quote was, if I can draft more Preciouses and Bouchers and Siakams and Scotties, then I will do that. And so I understand where he's coming from, and I'm not necessarily against that. Where I think the problem is that you can't teach every single dude how to shoot. Beyond has made this point a lot of times, but I'm going to steal the point, but also give him credit for it. I think we've been spoiled by the development of Siakam. I think a lot of people, you look at Siakam, you see him come up, you see the gains that he has made, and then you say, well, or you see other guys like Kawhi. And it's like, oh, well, Kawhi couldn't shoot, so OG can be Kawhi. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that, right? And I think that's part of the problem. Really quickly, just about Bush, not him. Christian Koloko is what I meant to say. That was not the Freudian slip that you want. Koloko, I didn't have a problem with him going down to the G League or to the Gulag, as I said. The issue is I think we left him there a little bit too long. That's where the problem was. I think he did, you got him minutes early on. That was good. I thought he got to the point where it's like, okay, it's time to get him some real minutes in the G League and let him grow in the G League. And he did well in the G League. I think we might have even took a little bit too long to get him there. And then once he was there, we kind of like left him there and forgot about him. And that's kind of where I was like, like since even the Jazz game, like you couldn't have played the brother, right? Like just 5 minutes. I get how some people are like, well, what 5 minutes? Pirtle, if I'm not mistaken, fouled out of that game. Okay, so there's really no excuse. And you have Pirtle who is foul prone, so you already have minutes available for a guy who's also foul prone. So, to me, I would just let him play, fouls out, that's fine. Play through your mistakes, especially at this age. Now, I also think that Christian Koloko, I think that, hey, we talked about it before, but I do think that he could really be pushing next year for a starting role. That doesn't necessarily mean when I say that we got to go ship a dude out, but I'm saying that I do think that there is a lot of talent there. I think he's shown passing flashes since even the Miami game. I think he's done a lot, and I've been fairly impressed, especially from the positioning standpoint. Although I did, I did say it on other shows that like I thought that he would be this good. So I think he's right on, the way that I think my original comp was a cross between Robert Williams, but with better shooting coming in. And I kind of stick to that in terms of his overall defensive prowess and ability. He's obviously more faster and athletic.
If he gets an off season with Siakam, his fellow countrymen, and they're practicing together and working out together, I got a sneaking suspicion he's going to be a big surprise next season. Because I would be shocked if he's going to go do his own thing. At least I would say like, hey, you know what? Let me, guy work out with you. I suspect the two of them are doing some stuff together this offseason and probably have been doing stuff throughout the year. I think, and then add Pirtle to it as well, too, from a development standpoint, how to play the position. I think he's going to be very different next year. He's of all the young guys that currently are on this team, he's the one I'm most excited about next season.
Yeah, James, quickly to answer this question, it's a very simple answer. If you don't have Nick Nurse here and you bring in a coach like Kenny Atkinson, he'll play who deserves to play. If you're showing something, you're playing well, you're defending, you'll play. If you're not, you're going to sit on the bench. I don't think Flynn will be a Raptor for very much longer. I expect him to be part of a trade. Precious, same thing. He needs to earn his minutes. Koloko will play. But the same thing off to earn his minutes. Delano, he was hurt all year. And if the plan is to have him and not Jeff Doughton, then I expect he'll play some backup minutes, depending on who they decide to put at the point. But any of these guys that have been on this 29th ranked defense this year are on the block, in my opinion.
With the exception of Koloko, I think.
With the exception of Koloko, Precious. Beyond can speak on Precious. He better beware. He's played okay recently, but he better beware.
Yeah, I mean he got to be aware of what's going on because his time is running out more than he thinks right now. Because I'm not sure what market there is out there for a Precious. I really question that. Sometimes I know I talk to guys here and we're doing kind of these kind of fake trades that are ahead. And I sometimes wonder, like, is Precious moving the needle that much for an opposing team to pick up? I don't think he is. I think that might be more home cooking that we think he is, but I don't think people are out there sitting there drooling for Precious Achiuwa. Like, I just don't see it. I think more and more I look at it, I'm not saying he's a completely a throw-in, but I think he's a guy in this case, like, oh, he's nice to have. We'll see what happens, like a flyer. I don't think he's a guy at this point where he's sitting there going like, well, for me to make the deal, I got to have Precious in the deal. And if I'm the Raptors, like, okay, have at it. If that's what you think to make the deal, whatever the deal may be, I would lose no sleep with that if that's the case.
The thing with Precious is, and Kenyon will probably call me on this, but I don't know what Precious does great. Like, give me something he does great because I don't see it. Anybody?
Oh, I mean, why I'm always the one picked to argue with you? I'm not disagreeing with you,
Coach. Okay, Kenyon, good coach. What does he do great? Because I don't see it.
Defend.
Raptors Dan, if you're out there, you can correct me if you want, but coach,
defend.
He defends
when he's motivated and when he is. Like when he had that stretch before the Pirtle trade, Precious looked very good. I think there's enough of a sample size to say we can run this back with him. And
JD, sorry, coach. Not in a million years will Dallas trade us Josh Green for Precious Achiuwa. Go ahead, coach.
I think Precious is one of those players that that teams do covet because if he is going to guard 1 through 5 and they want positional versatility, Precious can fill that void. But Precious's problem is sometimes he tries to do too much. He needs to keep his game more simple and focus more on what he can bring defensively. He's a great athlete. He's probably the best athlete on this team. But Precious just needs a lot of experience. But once we got Pirtle, that changed things for him. Now the marker is, well, we got to try to get to the playoffs, and I'm fine with that. But come next year, if Precious is coming in off the bench, he can't, like, that's got to be something he has to accept. Because if he doesn't want to play to his full potential here, then why keep him?
Kenny, you had something more on Precious?
Yeah. So sorry, I just put myself on mute for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm looking right now, and I'm just looking at Precious's stats. The defense has dropped off a bit overall this year, but he has shown in flashes that he can be a phenomenal defender. I think Coach Roache, spot on. He is probably the most athletic guy overall. From a fluidity standpoint, really good. Problem is his hands. He can't catch. You and I, so in terms of the debate, you and I were talking about people's hands yesterday. We were talking about Christian Koloko versus Precious Achiuwa. And you said Koloko can't catch. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about compared to Precious. So I'm like, I think that Koloko can catch, but it's the strength. With Precious, he's strong. That's not the problem. He can't catch. He has Biombo hands.
Yes.
So to me, I think that is like they should be having, I don't know what the name is, but the pads that they use to like bust you up as you're going up. They needed to do that all last season. They need to do it this all off season. If he cannot finish a layup consistently, he's done better, but I mean, he's gone to the point of Norm first season, right? You guys remember Norm first season, and that thing was going, and sometimes he would do things, and it'd be like, bunk, like you'd see the ball, and it's like some of the bricks that Van Vliet chucks up from like half court. It's the same sound, and it's a layup. So at some point, you if you can't, because he's not a consistent 3-point shooter, right? And offensively, from an awareness standpoint, it's like he can do some of the moves, some of the dribbles, but Read a scouting report. This is the most shocking thing. It's like good at straight line drives, but also this is what it's like. Okay, so he's a rim runner. Okay, great, but okay, like at some point, if I know what you're gonna do every single time because you're like this and you have your horse blinders on, you can't pass, then you're gonna get in trouble. So like we need to be reasonable here, and look, I get the potential, but and I get the whole thing that he missed out on a year of development, even though people forget he didn't get the Flynn treatment. He got 60 games in Miami where he's getting 12 minutes a game, so it's not like he didn't play. At some point, you do have to look at this guy and say, okay, whether it's Nick Nurse or whoever else's pill, maybe the Kenny Atkinson pill, how many of these guys are you going to try to teach how to shoot?
Yeah, there's too many. So I'm going to go to a very sensitive topic as we look to close the show because we're all going to eat Easter dinner at some point. Pascal Siakam.
Oh, I thought you were going in a completely different direction.
No, we're going to Pascal because if you look at our situation, Pascal has 1 year left in his contract after this season. If the Raptors decide to keep everyone, which is not going to happen, or they somehow suck next year, what are the chances Pascal's either traded or leaves the team beyond?
Oh boy, there's a lot of different variables involved in this, right? A new coach might have a different thing like that. Particular personnel in the team might have to make a decision on that. There's a lot of different things that could, the growth of,
or even if the Raptors decide just we're gonna trade him and move on because we can't get any better. Like there's a lot of scenarios, obviously, in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's made up. Yeah, I like the way you frame it that way because like if Pascal's doing what he's doing this year in this case, and the team's no better, to me, I think it's less of an indictment on him and more to do with the lack of growth of our team around him. Right. Because if that's the case, that means probably this case in the equation, Scotty hasn't developed to be the player you thought he would be at this point in year 3. That would tell me in this case here, the bench is still no better than it was before. That would tell me in this case here, there's been no growth or expansion in this case in Pirtle's game in any sort of way to help loosen up things. All these things are what I'm talking about here. And yeah, Pascal has to grow too. But I guess when I look at the spectrum of growth at this point here, I don't think there's like a small amount of growth left in this case from a Siakam thing. And as I said before, I think it's less to do with what his skill set is and more to do with, in this case, the heart and mind and reaching a certain area that he might not be able to do himself. And I think that's where he might need another, a coach or someone else to help him with that, or even somehow another player that becomes as good as him to help loosen things up for him. That you can see that in this him. So a lot of things I don't think are dependent on him, and I think that will make his decision for him. The rule of thumb in the NBA is, man, you always want to get paid by your home team, right? That's where you get the most money, and then after that, you can ask for a trade at that point. So wherever the thing is, I think Pascal will be re-signed with the Raptors in some form or fashion.
So you would say next year is a very, very important year for the Raptors, like
and a whole bunch of ways, right? Like, I mean,
massively.
Because it could go south in a lot of different ways, right? Like, I mean, unlike we kind of tease and laugh about the Maverick situation, which as we should in some ways, but it's not. The Raptors at the moment is fixable, but if certain things don't happen next year, it can get very, very dicey in this case real fast. And I think number 4 is where it starts with. If he turns into the player that they deem him to be, then it's all good. You can make any type of move you want to. But if he ends up being like what we've seen for the first 2 years, and I wouldn't even say last year, I thought he's actually quite good, but say he's like this next year, like at that point, you're sitting there going, whoa. And this is the reason why I've always been in the position or the mindset of getting a second pick as a kind of like a security blanket in case things don't go the way they're supposed to go. And I know folks on here are Scotty faithful and think that in this case here, it's blue skies and fluffy clouds. I ain't saying that might not happen. I'm just saying this is the reality of the NBA. And you got to look after 2 years. Okay, here's where he's at. Some things he's doing better at. Some things he's not as good at. And you have to ask yourself, to get the best out of Scotty, what do we do? And at the same time, even if it's some running mates with him for future teams, but you wouldn't mind a guy in this case, if things don't work out just quite the right way, you have a guy there might end up being somewhat of a co-star, let's put it that way, with him in the future. And I think that's why it's mandatory or a priority to get that second pick.
So having said that, there's a lot of pressure on Scott next year to really take that next step.
Yeah, the year 3, some people say year 2 kind of gives you an indication what type of player you have. There's a rule that says if you look at the career, when a guy retires, look at his second year. When his career ends, his averages usually end up being that. I remember Shaq saying so. I think Shaquille O'Neal said so when someone told him in this case. I can't remember a scout or a GM or something like that. And not saying it's always the case, but a lot of times when you look at the second year stats of a player, when their career is done, they tend to fall right back to what that is. Now, I'm not saying in this case that he won't have years where he's averaging 20 plus a game. That's possible, but it's also possible that he might end up being a guy that usually gives you 17 points and plugs holes. And to be honest with you, based on his history of high school and college, he's been more that type of guy, the latter than the former. A plug guy that just fills up all the spots you want, but he's not really that dude. So we'll see. It's banking for a lot for him to be that dude, and I'm just saying that we'll see what happens. But I would like to have a backup plan. That's all I have.
Kenyon, I can see you folding your arms. How much?
Oh no, it has nothing. It has nothing to do with this. I'm listening. I'm listening.
Kenyon,
I'm also watching the sun go down. So,
how much pressure is there on Scott next year? Because it could be the deciding factor on whether Siakam, this whole Siakam situation next year as well. Like next year is a big year for this team.
Well, I mean, between the last question and this question, I'll kind of combine two things. So, in terms of Barnes, I mean, he was the rookie of the year, and the second that you're the rookie of the year, there are different expectations on you, especially. It's not like Michael Carter Williams that year, right? Like there's a different type of expectation from this type of draft, right? And all respect to Michael Carter Williams, and also shout out to him for getting his contract. Magic actually brought him back this year.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So another guard. So I think you look at Barnes, and I've always said the future of the franchise is in his hands. It definitely is. It's up to him to see how far we go. I mean, in the case of some other people seem to think that I'm like vastly different than them because I'm a Siakam fan, and I don't think it's like a this versus that. I really do think that they can work together. I still don't understand why they can't work together. They both pass the ball. I don't, yes, you would want really the person who needs to do the most expanding of their range is Barnes, frankly, and you would want them to, because he's like, what, 22, maybe? Not even?
He's 21. I think he'll be
he's
21 in a couple of months. Yeah.
There you go. So, I mean, if you're 21 years old, I'm not freaking out about like, oh my gosh, but yes, you are the young core, right? There's really, I mean, I guess him and Koloko, but really it's Barnes. So to me, I'm totally, I'm in total agreement from that perspective. But in terms of looking at Siakam, I think for next year, I don't see them trading him. I think it would depend on what the package is, but I just don't see any team that, when I've gone through and I've done a lot of thinking about this, I don't see a team that can meet what the asking price would be or should be for a Siakam. I just don't see it. You could say, oh, the closest thing might be Luka, but then you're doing Siakam plus. And also, if I'm Dallas, why would I take Siakam and not ask for Barnes, right? If I'm, like it's any sort of team that is going to be to take major steps. It's just a lot of these teams that would be contending, that would want to take a stab at Siakam, they don't really have the ability to make those moves because they have already lost a lot of their assets to get to where they are. The other thing too is that because of the new CBA, you can't some of these teams that are in the luxury tax, you can't trade 7 years out anymore. You can't do certain things. You can't. So there's less moves around the edges. I mean, we didn't even get into all that, and we don't have to today because we don't have the time. I see some people are hungry in the chat or whatever, but I really do think that we have to keep some of these things in mind. And I just think we're way too invested to end up going in the direction of trading Siakam. And also, people make the argument, oh, well, OG has less value. Okay, well, Siakam's expiring too. Wouldn't he have less value? So why wouldn't I understand for Siakam, but he's worth the most. You don't if you mess that up, that's it. That's it for a while. You really mess up your franchise. So to me, I don't see any reason why. I don't know if he'll get all NBA or not, but give him his max, whatever you can give him. Or give anything less than a super max, I think is a win for the Raptors. Honestly, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. I've yet to see someone argue otherwise. And then at least if it doesn't work out next year and you say, oh man, this guy sucks. I don't believe that. But say people really truly believe that it doesn't work or there's friction between him and Scotty somehow, which again, I don't really see. Then you can make that move, and he's still under contract. He's still in the prime of his career, and you're not trading and expiring. Sorry, I just hear stuff on the other end.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll finish off my point with this. I think for a guy like Siakam, you wouldn't hire his trainer, his brother, and all these things if you were just going to get rid of him. And I think at the head of what Siakam has, people say, oh, well, Siakam talks about Fred like Siakam. He does not. He does not. I'm not saying he doesn't talk highly of Fred, but there's only, even OG, he doesn't talk about like Siakam. He really does. I mean, heck, you even see Larry Tannenbaum say, hey, we're not going to get rid of you. You're stuck with us, right? So to me, it's almost like what Beyond keeps saying. As long as Tannenbaum is around, some of these dudes you're stuck with, whether you like it or not.
So even if they're struggling next year, you're not trading him. You're still re-signing him.
I would re-sign him this offseason, then you don't have to worry about it. And I think for that type of move, you'd wait for the end of the season. But you can't come back with Fred and Pascal and like everyone.
No.
And GTJ, hey, get the band back together. Let's do the Backstreet Boys, coming for another, and everyone's looking a little raggedy at this point.
And you don't think Pascal chooses to leave either?
Yeah, BSB get you astray.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think I don't. Why I Pascal's cool as a cat, right?
Yeah,
he's cool as a cat. I think he's happy with being here, but I think ultimately he wants to win, right? I think he really truly wants to win here. He said it with his own. People have been crazy by saying, oh, he doesn't want to win or he only values his contract. The second he won, he was in the barbershop on open gym. What did he say? He wasn't saying, oh, bet on yourself or have some fur coat with it, or posting on Instagram with a stack of cash. Oh, we're going to get paid. No, he was like, you know what? When you get that feeling, you want to do what it takes to get that again. Why would you want to get rid of your hardest worker?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, you just heard Draymond Green mention it on the show, talk about how much he worked. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's Draymond Green. That guy works pretty hard, right? People around the league know, and they have tons of respect for Siakam. And I think just like the DeMar situation, you got to handle this very gently if you were going to move Siakam, because a lot of dudes in the league respect what he does.
And a lot of dudes want to play with him. KD literally was on his way out. He's like, yo, can we get Siakam? So if you want your best chance of Toronto maybe being a free agent destination, you keep that dude.
Coach, your thoughts on the question about Siakam and then the importance of Scotty in that equation?
Yeah, I think them acquiring Pirtle basically assured Siakam, like, we're re-signing Pirtle. We want him to be here 3-4 years probably, Matt, whatever his prime will look like. And I think the same thing is going to be for Pascal. He just turned 29. He signs one more big deal that would take him to about 33, 34 years old. But I think it's Siakam's work ethic, why you want him on this team. He gets a lot of respect around the NBA about being like one of the hardest workers in the NBA. And if I'm bringing on the next iteration of Raptor players led by Scotty, I want that guy in the locker room. I want that guy in practice. this is how you practice. This is how you prepare for games. This is what a routine looks like. Pascal brings all of that, I think, to the team. And I just think they'll re-sign him for sure. And like Kenyon said, bring in his brother as a coach, and Rico Hines, and now Pirtle. So they are making some moves to make him happy. But now it's like, can we put the right talent around him now on the basketball court? In terms of Scotty, it's going to be a big year for him coming up next year. And also moving forward, because he'll be up for an extension as well at some point. And Scotty has shown some flashes this year of what he could be. And he actually, I think someone had tweeted, he has better numbers than what Giannis had in year 2 and stuff like that are comparable. It's not to say he's good to be Giannis, but there's something there. There's something there that's big time talent. And a lot of things that Scotty has, you can't teach. You can't teach the vision. You can't teach the IQ. A lot of the things that he can improve on are done in the gym. So it's speeding up his form more, because it's still a little slow for me. Ever since that Lakers game, I have seen a little bit of change in his form in terms of the elbow is in more, and it's just starting to speed up a little bit in the post. Now it's like, can we do that from behind the perimeter as well? Because the difference between where he is now to an all-star is probably the jump shot. I think Beyond has said, if Scotty at his peak might be 22, 8, and 8, something like that, I can see that 100%, because he does rebound well, he does pass well, he can score when he wants to, especially in the fourth quarter, but we need to see a complete game of that, especially for him, for his talent. He's got potential Hall of Fame talent. Now it's just putting it all together to see what exactly you have.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm hoping that he's able to deliver, and I think next year needs to be that year, considering how important it is. And I guess the last thing I'm going to talk about before we leave is I've made it a point to talk about Pascal Siakam's leadership, not in necessarily a negative way, but someone who needs to find his voice. He's a very humble, quiet, just play ball kind of guy. I think sometimes this Raptor team is missing a guy who can, we know Fred does this, which is why he needs to be gone. But when he is gone, is Pascal going to become that guy who says, give me the ball and get out of my way? Or is it going to be Scotty? Because I think the Raptors need someone who's going to direct this team, not named Fred and Nick. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I guess I'll start. That's the rationale why I like a guy like Stackhouse in this case in the position for the type of coach he had, because not only can he actually maybe address some of the things you're talking about, Reese, but also he can be a quote leader off the court in this case to speak on behalf of the team for certain things. Where now I agree, you need someone in the locker room like that too, but I think that one there, there might be guys that might start asserting themselves more when Fred's gone, right? Sometimes addition by subtraction, right? When Fred's not there any longer, some guys might feel more open to voice their opinion about stuff. You'll see that vacuum's filled in maybe by perhaps someone. Scotty's voice might get bigger, be in year 3, for example. A guy like Otto Porter in this case here will have maybe more say next year as he's part of the team, hopefully playing. So there's ways to address that part of it. But I think Pascal in this case is very much, I kind of comparing, he's very much like a Tim Duncan type of guy. Come in, gets his lunch pail, puts on his hat, he goes to work. And guys follow, as Coach said, follow what he does. That's his way of leadership. You tend to have on a team sometimes one guy is the vocal guy and one guy is like, you know what, just follow what I do, right? Pascal's got the other side covered. The vocal part's been kind of the part that's been missing on this team, post Lowry. We don't have a guy quite like that in this case here. As much as Fred's tried to do so, it really hasn't worked out the way we'd hope. And once in a while you get the two in combination, like a LeBron in this case, where it's it's like, oh, this guy's also the hardest worker on the team, and he's the guy who's going to speak for the team, right? But that's not necessarily the case a lot of times. A lot of times, usually split in the two camps usually. So I think over time that vacuum will be filled by other players in this team. But I think right now you have a bit of a bottleneck until you move off a Fred in that standpoint.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you're talking.
I
Yeah.
muted myself. Coach or Kenyon. I knew I was going to do that once during this.
Gets you every time, right?
Yeah. Coach or Kenyon on the Scotty or Pascal or someone after Fred and Nick leave, giving them a voice that can help direct this team in the right direction going forward.
it's all you, Kenyon.
Sure. Well, first of all, if you get Cam Whitmore, that won't be a problem because the way he moves on the court, he'll make. But to be honest, point, yeah, I'll double down on that. I think, you put it very eloquently where you're saying that like you need a guy that almost can empower Siakam, and to go back to the Siakam point, it's like you have this guy, he works really hard, he's getting paid the most on the team. He could rest on his laurels. But he's like, to me, if you come into the NBA and you're on your first rookie scale contract or whatever, they say a hungry man is an angry man, right? So to me, you need to be looking at, okay, well, I need to be working harder than him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have that. You look to whatever else comes after that, where you want guys that empower you. You need to you look at the old open gyms, and they would say 3-2-1 together, right? You need this team to come together. You need. I think if you're alluding to Pascal being a number one option, I think what a number one option today is different than it would have been back 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes.
I think it's a very different thing now. I mean, we saw that so many. I mean, I had debates with people throughout the year about Luka, and well, there's your number one guy. If he's so much better than LeBron, at this stage of his career, I think LeBron was in the playoffs the last time I remember with Boobie Gibson. So I'm just saying, at some level, I think you need to put the team around him, and I think you need to empower him so that because Siakam's not going to be the type of guy, which I don't know if this is a good leadership either. I don't think you need a leader that's like, give me the damn thing. Sometimes you want a guy who is like Beyond is saying, a Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan isn't necessarily a guy that's going to ruffle feathers, but Pop did it for him.
Right.
So let's go get that Pop. Don't actually get Pop because I don't think he has many years left.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Coach, and then we will close out this. I'd like after Coach is done, we'll close out, and then I'll just ask and thank some guys after. Coach, what do you think about? I just feel like this team is missing that vocal leader that can really like push them in the right direction. Is it going to be Pascal or Scotty? Because I don't think Fred's going to be on this team next year, or Nick.
I think it's a good question. It's probably because I actually think Siakam and Scotty, like, I don't know how vocal they are in the locker room per se. Scotty's typically vocal on the court and stuff like that. Maybe not as much this year as he was last year, but it'll probably be Pascal. But I think each person needs to lead with their authentic self, whatever that may be. I think Siakam is someone who leads by doing. So he leads it in the practice. He leads it in how he trains. He leads it on preparation and stuff like that. And Scotty, I'm not really sure what his leadership style would be. I think Siakam would lead in that regards. And I don't know if Siakam is much of a rah-rah talker kind of guy. I think he just leads by doing. And if that's his style next year, that's fantastic. As long as he does it and he's not trying to be someone else. Like, don't be Fred or don't be don't be Jordan. Don't just be him. Just be him and lead because I think he garners a lot of respect from players in the NBA, even his teammates too. Lead by doing.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. If anyone's watched that Draymond Green interview, it certainly seems like he has a lot of respect around the league, and looks like it'd certainly be a mistake to ever let him go. I think Scott has the potential to be that guy, but he's inconsistent with it. Like, you see him in the fourth quarter going like a crazy man, but he can't bring that the whole game. I like this Jerry Stackhouse move more and more because he would certainly bring that voice to this team. So this conversation has made me want Stackhouse a little bit more than before, because he can certainly empower players into being to finding their voice. Guys, we've gone on for 2.5 hours, and I'd really like to thank Coach Beyond and Kenyon sticking with me on this Easter weekend. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. We finally caught a Saturday where there was not much going on, and we could actually have a nice conversation. For anyone who came on to comment on the show, I really would love to thank you for coming on. Please subscribe to my channel, The Reese Report. We also have Basketball Rewind, which I will be on discussing draft picks next week. Beyond the Locker Room, the highlight of most spaces. It makes me laugh every time he's on there. Love listening to him. It's why I had him on the show. Coach Roache showed me a side of him that I hope he brings more often, because God, did I love listening to him. I've listened to him say that sentence on the space at least 4 times. I've listened to him go crazy on that game for Boston. He's so angry, and I've never heard him like that before. And I hope when they play Milwaukee and Chicago, or God forbid they get to the playoffs and play the Bucks, that I get to hear more of that. And his wife
Fahim, if you ever watch this, Fahim, I'm allowed 1 rant per year, and that was it. I will not rant anymore for the rest of this season. I've seen enough. They're just not that good.
No, and even Nelly was like, even Nelly thought you were trying to apologize for being so nasty, and I'm like, no, let him go. Kenyon, as always, thank you for bringing your perspective. And I hope to have you all on again, and I hope to be on your channels as well. Would you guys like to promote anything before we leave?
I'll go. Well, obviously, Basketball Rewind, all one word, easy to find. Another thing is just, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but if there are any of you who are underrepresented and are interested in careers in medicine, especially, or children who are, definitely U of T, University of Toronto, Community of Support. They offer a lot of free resources for people. So I think that kind of stuff is really important, something I'm really super passionate about. And so, yeah, it's that kind of thing. And also, check out when Reese Report will be coming on my channel at some point. I don't know when I'm going to post a video, because I'm like 3 videos behind, but I am expecting us to have a very good conversation about a couple different prospects.
Yes, the Raptors have made me focus so much on this draft with their horrible play that I am going to be deep diving into the draft this year, which I haven't really done before. So I'm just looking at all these prospects because that's all I care about right now. This Raptor season, I could care less. Beyond, would you like to promote anything coming up?
You said great segue here, and it's very noble stuff here that Kenyon mentioned. So it's hard to follow that, but I'll just say this: as far as the draft goes, you can find me. Usually with the guys here, doing our thing about the draft coming up on Basketball Rewind. Of course, I shout out the guys at RLTV, give me an opportunity, a platform. So check them out on now a pre and post game show coming up. So they're doing big things there, and shout out to them. So, and you just find me on Twitter, man, with my musings of anything, man. Be it the Masters or nonsense from the Raptors. You take it, you'll see.
Yes. Beyond is a big. A wide range of sports, which makes his Twitter handle quite entertaining. Hearing about the Masters weather today was great. Coach, we know where we can find you. Would you like to promote anything? Is your wife looking at you in the background, yelling at you again, or laughing at you again? Anything like that?
She was laughing at me last night, but I'm going to sound kind of like a diplomat here, but seriously, all the Raptors content creators out there, like you of course, Reese with your Reese Report and the To The Point and Kenyon's Basketball Rewind, Fahim and Nelly and their Raptors Live TV space. And I'll give a shout out to Zazu too, who hosts some space as well. Like, this is something that we are all passionate about. It's a good outlet for me. Basketball's just been a big part of my life, whether it's playing or coaching. And I really appreciate just having this space in which we can talk about and do all of this, because we're just passionate basketball fans and we want to see the Raptors win.
Yes, and for myself, I'm really trying to grow my channel. I've expanded it. I've increased my audience on Twitter, which is why I joined Raptors Live TV. I'd like to thank Fahim and Nelly for showing me a lot of respect, letting me speak my mind on that channel to get my name out there. I've really been trying to get myself out there, let people know who I am, my knowledge in the game and other games. And I cover a lot of sports on there, and I'm really trying to grow the channel and bring new guests on, which is why I'm very happy to have these gentlemen here. And anyone else who wants to be on my show, anyone who's listening, anyone who's watched us, hey, you can be on my show. We can discuss Raptors. We can discuss basketball, football, any sport. I think I'm going to have Beyond for other things because he's got a wide range of knowledge there. So I think I'm going to have him on for other sports as well. But
we're going to go down the Lamar discussion right now, dude.
Oh man, like as we go forward, there's going to be a lot of content and us being on each other's shows and all kinds of stuff. So I'm looking very, very forward to that. Please subscribe to my channel, to Basketball Rewind, and have a follow for all of us, because we're very passionate and we bring a lot of knowledge, and we really enjoy the game, although the Raptors really haven't given us much to enjoy this year. And that's why we're here. But thank you all for joining us. I'm going to end this now so everyone can go eat and enjoy their Easter. Thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Later, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.